I don't believe trade is the main driver of that, but I'll grant that it does happen sometimes.
Who cares about bringing money? Okay, the whole idea of running like a business.
I don't really think it's something that you should take. I don't know.
The argument against charging people rent?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, typically the philosophical argument against
that's a legitimate criticism. Because, I mean, you look at why USAID was even invented.
So, I don't know. Like, I think a recurring theme or a recurring trend is that
less and less government. I want personal responsibility. I want personal accountability.
say that I'm like left of liberal. I don't identify as like a communist or alternative stuff. Probably like a why would that be revelatory to know that water boils in?
About people who are diplomats or ambassadors from other.
Did I say that? Did I say that it was theoretically possible to include like it increase?
Natural society is a society where it's survival of.
You can. What you're describing, you can't do. Is, first of all, not what I'm talking about. Second of all, we can't.
So basically, like, even your Lord and Savior Donald Trump didn't do the best job.
That nature, you refer to it as being conscious, or the conscious community.
So I think that gay marriage at the constitutional at the Supreme Court level actually.
No, but my man just is in the building.
And I find it very interesting that fellow believers are.
Sure, there are examples, but these are minor examples compared to the ones that I'm giving. I'm talking about two.
It's unconstitutional, they shouldn't do it. But now they're arguing about, well, if they do it.
This video with a little blonde hair.
Yeah, that's what your mom said last night too.
Let's ignore USAID. That's obviously upsetting you, and I get that because
no, it's not upsetting me.
There's a reason I'm successful. There's a reason why I'm liked.
This is exactly why Democrats.
And good evening and welcome back to Mater Nation. I am Sarah the Raging Tomato, and apologies that this throwdown was delayed on my terms. It was my fault. I had a really long week with the dog, but Dr. Blitz here was so kind to reschedule with me, and I appreciate your flexibility for doing that. But he is here to talk about the world wasn't created. Quite a claim. And a strong one at that. But Dr. Blitz, tell them where they can find you, all of the fun stuff you want to say, and then we will dive into your claim and why we're here tonight.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. I do appreciate it, and I'm glad that the dog is doing better. So I can be found in various social medias, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, kind of, although they've decided to prevent me from posting anything there. YouTube, of course. The handle is Blitz PhD, basically everywhere, no spaces. You can also go to my website, which is just blitz.phd. You can find all the stuff there too. I guess it's 6:30, so that means that I don't remember what other questions you asked me.
That's okay. Let's dive into your claim.
Yeah.
Tell me why you say the world wasn't created, because that kind of, I'm thinking of it this way, like, well, something had to create out of something, regardless, whether it was God or whether it was science or whether it was Big Bang, I don't know, something. But to say it wasn't created, I want to dive in why you think that.
Yeah, so what I mean by created here, and I'm distinguishing between created and formed, right? So we can say that, if water is dripping from a cave, right, and the water drips, and then over thousands of years, it makes like a crystal or something. I don't think that it would be reasonable to say that the crystal was created. Usually we say created meaning to form something with intention. So Steve Jobs created the iPhone. He did this on purpose. But the crystal in the cave, this just formed naturally. And so that's the distinction I'm making. Importantly, I think that there's essentially 3 options or so you could have that the universe has always existed. In which case, and of course by the world, I'm not referring to the Earth, of course. The universe could have always existed, in which case, if something's always existed, surely it doesn't need a creator, because it never began to exist. The second case is that the world did have a beginning, meaning that there was a first moment of time. Now, there's 2 branches there. One could either be that the first moment of time was produced by some sort of divine being or some sort of simulator named Jeff living in his mom's basement, wherever it might be, or that there was some natural reason for why time began that didn't require time beforehand. And my contention is merely that, look, we have a whole host of different ways that we can talk about where the universe came from, whether it's eternal into the past or whether it had like a proper beginning. And as far as I can tell, all of the descriptions of the way the world is seem to function perfectly fine in terms of natural descriptions. We can talk about either it beginning or not beginning perfectly naturally. So adding in some intentionful creator seems to, I don't know, be unnecessary, doesn't explain anything additional. And, you know, generally we have good inductive reason to think that things that do begin from natural causes. So as far as I'm concerned, adding in a creator, adding in intention, just, it's like, it's doing too much. You don't need it. It doesn't explain anything extra. So I don't think that it was created.
Can the creator be the natural cause?
It could be, but that's just not what I mean by, like, when I say created, I'm usually inferring some sort of intention. So, I mean, it could be that the creator, if there is a creator, that it intended to create something naturally, but then why do you need the intention at all if it can happen naturally?
Okay. Like I think of let's say a parasite, for instance. A parasite is intentionally going to latch onto something to try to extrapolate its resources, right, for it to survive. Now it's natural that the parasite does that, but it's also intentional that it does that for survivability. The survivability is a natural thing, but like you could say it's intentional, but you could also say it's nature. It's part of human nature, it's part of animal nature, it's part of bug nature, insect, plants even do the same thing.
Debatable, but sure.
Well, yeah, like
do
for
they
instance,
intend?
Well, I think what's a Venus flytrap? It intentionally puts out a certain scent, right?
Maybe.
For flies to come in and to trap them. But is it alive? Is it not alive? Like, is it doing it with intention? Or is it just nature?
So I'm not saying that intention can't be, that intention must be distinct from natural. So, I mean, we're living organisms. The things that we do, even if we intend to do them, they are still natural because they're the result of natural physical laws having consequences, right? So even if I intend to do something, the reason why I intended to do it was because stuff was happening in my brain and neurons went off and all this lovely stuff. And then that intention was manifested through some actions. But the important distinction between a natural origin of the universe and a and a non-natural origin or an intentional origin of the universe is that if there is no universe, there is no natural, right? The is all that is natural. If you want to have an intender that is the origin of the universe, you have to invoke the supernatural. You have to invoke the metaphysical, the beyond, the you know, in some sense, beyond the universe, beyond the laws of physics, the chemistry, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is to say, I'm happy to say that intention and natural formation can go hand in hand when it comes to the things doing the intending themselves being natural. But that just doesn't follow for a universe being created.
Would intention require intelligence? Because you mentioned it, like your brain, like I choose to do something, so on and so forth. Would intention require intelligence in order to call it intention?
It's a little bit vague. Typically, the way that intention is used is not necessarily intelligence, because you could perhaps say that, like, the example that you gave was like a tick, right? Or like a flea. Perhaps it doesn't have intelligence in the way that we think of it because, you know, it's sort of a mechanism, but it has some, but it's acting on some sort of desires of some kind. So I wouldn't say it has to have intelligence, but it definitely has to have some sort of agency or some sort of will, some sort of desires that it can act on. That's what intention is. It's when you have a, in some sense, a desire to do something.
That's a stark distinction, but not distinction at the same time, right? Like I think I'm still stuck in the nature versus like we are humans, we have a brain and we intentionally create things. You said Steve Jobs created the iPhone, so on and so forth. But I still think an animal still, even though its intellect might be less than ours, it still acts with intention to survive or to eat or to mate or to kill, so on and so forth. So I think I'm a little stuck on that one. It might take me a little work to get by it.
So I can clarify.
Sure.
My view is that generally, and this is perhaps a place of contention, but my view is generally something like you have to have some sort of brain, some sort of neural circuitry in order to have these sorts of desires and wills and intentions, these kinds of things. You might not have to be intelligent in the way that we normally think of it. Maybe like, I don't know, a very, very simple organism might not be intelligent, like an ant, right? But they do still have like neural circuitry. They are still driven by certain instincts. And so you could call that a will. I think that that's totally fine. So I'm happy to say that a dog can have intention, or a dolphin can have intention, or maybe even an ant can have intention. Probably not a tree. I don't know if a tree can have intention. It seems like it's more of like
wouldn't it have intentions to branch out and grow bigger?
I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just a thing that happens. I think of a tree as more of like a biological robot than something that has internal some sort of internal experience, which is required for intention. Now, of course, that's contentious. There will be some people, I don't want to say biologists, but some people associated with biology that say, oh, well, we've documented trees having some sort of communication, whatever. That's contentious. The point is like, if you take like an amoeba, I'm not sure an amoeba has intention, because I just don't think it has the capacity to have any sort of experience, to have a sort of conscious awareness or anything like that. And I think that those are the kinds of things that are required for intention. But surely like the cave dripping from the cave water dripping from the ceiling, that wouldn't have intention at all. It's just kind of a thing that happens mechanistically. So that's the distinction that I'm making here. In some sense, an intention would be associated with some sort of desire for something to happen. And cave water doesn't have a desire to do anything. It's just water, right? And an amoeba probably doesn't have desires. Maybe it does. Maybe you can say that if it's alive, then it has desires of some kind. But again, these are still physical things that are alive. Whereas I'm not sure that the creator of the universe is the kind of thing that, well, if there is a creator, it seems like it would, in order to have intention, it would need to have some sort of mind of some kind, some sort of way of having a will or having desires in a non-physical way. And I think that that's probably a big stretch to ask.
Okay, so you would 100% say, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that there would be like no singular supreme being of any sort, or prime being, or creator of like the universe is as it is. We didn't need a creator, and we don't have a creator of any sort.
I mean, yeah, like, look, I'm humble enough to recognize that, like, I could be wrong, of course. Like, I could be wrong about a lot of things. But my position is, if you're going to propose an idea that's supposed to explain something, like, a lot of people, this idea of like a creator or a god, I don't want to say it was proposed to explain this, but is often used to explain why the world exists, why there is a universe rather than nothing, right? But if we can explain all of those things without having to add this extra supernatural thing, and I'm using supernatural just to mean not natural, then it seems like it doesn't buy you anything extra to propose that this thing exists. Now, could it exist? Perhaps. I'm not going to make the claim that you can prove with 100% certainty that it's not going to exist. My claim is merely that we have very good reason to think that we don't need a creator to explain the world, and that there are some issues with a creator if you're trying to invoke it to explain the world. And so on the balance of the arguments, on the balance of the evidence, it just seems like, yeah, there just isn't one.
Okay. So tell me about your thought process then for how the universe is. Like, how did it become?
Yeah, so here I have to show my epistemic humility. There are, as far as I can tell, and not to shill, because I promise I'm not shilling. There's a book that I read fairly recently. It's called Battle of the Big Bang. I've chatted with one of the authors. He's a very smart guy. But it basically goes over 25 different reasons, or 25 different possible explanations for what caused the Big Bang. I mean, if we all agree that the Big Bang happened, there's a question of what caused it. Like, was there something before it? Was there not something before it? How did it happen? And it turns out none of those 25 explanations require a god, or a creator for that matter. They're all just natural physical mechanisms. Now they're different, and we don't know which of those are right, if any. But as far as I'm concerned, there are enough possible explanations for where the world came from that, like, I just can't put my finger on it. I just don't know which of these is right. I don't think we have enough data. But I wouldn't be surprised if one of them was right in there.
So which theory would you roll with, I guess, the most? Like, which one would you say, if I could put money on something, this is what I'd put it on?
So here I have to reveal my power level. For those who don't know, I am a physicist. This is my job. So I have my own pet things. So my best guess is that the universe undergoes cycles of some kind, and that the Big Bang was just the most recent one. That would be my best guess. Now, do I have any evidence to support this? No, but it is really clean. It's a really clean explanation, and it's at least in the realm of possibility. And, a dozen or so of the models in the book are cycles of some kind. Now, which specific kind of cycle involves like what kind of, like, are you doing like string theory or what are you doing? But like, there's a whole bunch of more sophisticated stuff there. But I would like that to be true. Now, do I know that that's true? Do I believe that that's true? I don't know. But it would be nice if it were. It'd be a very clean explanation. And I value clean explanations.
Right. So do you think that at any given point there was nothing?
I don't think so. If we're talking about like true philosophical nothingness, it seems like that's kind of really hard to even think that could even possibly exist. It's not clear to me that it, like, if you have nothing, then it seems like you have something, which is nothing. And so I'm not proposing that this is a proof that, nothingness can't exist, but something about it seems fishy. And honestly, I think that whether you're a theist, whether you believe in God, whether you're a deist, whether you're an atheist, whatever it is, I think that everybody's going to have an issue with there have ever been possibly nothing. Because if you believe in God, then God was always there, right? So even then, you don't want to say that nothing is possible, because then you have to say, well, why is there a God rather than nothing at all? So,
right.
We could have that conversation about whether nothing could possibly exist. Maybe it can, but I think that's even if it could, I think that's a problem for everybody. I generally take the position that it probably can't, for reasons that I can't articulate. It's something about it seems off, but I could be wrong about that.
Then how, I mean, you said that the cycle concept, but how does the cycle even begin?
If it's a cycle, it doesn't have a beginning. Where's the beginning of a circle?
Well, but how did the circle get there?
Well,
who drew the
if
circle?
It's always been, then it doesn't need explanation. Right? So generally we think of like, if you draw a circle on a sheet of paper, that circle, like, even though once it's done, it's just like a complete circle, there's no beginning. Like, that circle was at some point not there, and then at some point was there. And so you say, okay, well, who drew the circle, right? But if we're talking about a cycle in time, then there was no first moment, because every moment had a moment before it, and until it loops back around.
This feels like almost like getting into like, are we repeating something at some point? Maybe.
It's something I've thought about. Now, to be clear, it's not necessarily the case that when I say cycle, it doesn't necessarily imply that it's like an actual perfect loop and everything's the same. It could. What I mean is just that the universe expands and then something happens and then it either contracts or it pops off a new universe and it kind of repeats. It doesn't have to repeat itself forever exactly. All I'm saying is that there's some sort of there's basically two ways that you can have like kind of eternal universes, and one is kind of like a budding universe where it just keeps branching, and it's branching to the past forever, branching to the future forever. And the other one is kind of like expanding and contracting kind of thing. I'm referring to the latter, but that doesn't necessarily imply that it's repeated, but it might be.
So even the sun, because the sun is a star, right? But that's in a form of a cycle, and at some point that cycle can end and create another star at another realm, and then we just we could essentially become a whole nother universe, sucked in with the gravity and all of these other things, and something else. Another,
dead.
Right? We would be gone, but like another universe could begin from that, and billions of years later, there's two more people sitting on a screen having the same conversation.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. I mean, that could be happening a trillion light years from now, right now. Anyway, like, who knows? The universe is quite a large place. But yeah, so and for what it's worth, like, I have a predilection towards elegance in the way that I think about the world. And so, maybe that's giving me some bias as far as the universe being cyclic in that way. I just think it's nice and clean. But I think that there are totally defensible views that you can hold where the universe genuinely does have a first moment of time. And in that case, well, then there's something to explain why was there a first moment of time. But we have ways of describing, we have natural ways of accounting for that. And there's like, again, in the book, there's like 5 or so, and I've encountered a few more out in the wild just by looking at the scientific literature. So as far as I can tell, whether or not someone wants to say that the universe has a beginning or not, it doesn't necessarily imply that there's a God, is what I'm concerned. Like, we can explain it either way, whether or not the universe had a beginning. So it just doesn't seem necessary to invoke a creator.
But we can't necessarily prove Big Bang or other theories, right? Just the same as you would say you can't necessarily prove a creator. So at which point does the one proof become greater than the other?
So I think we weigh the evidence, right? So there's this very famous argument in. Sorry, this is. By the way, no, it's not sponsored. This is a Czech drink. This is a soda bottle from the Czech Republic. I import these in a case. It's $50 for a case of 12, but it's so worth it. Anyway.
That's pretty intense. I don't know if I could imagine paying $50 for 12 of anything.
I mean, I used to live in the Czech Republic, and it's the one thing that I miss most from there. So, having a little bit of home.
Okay.
Anyway,
that makes sense.
Yeah. But so I think that what we have to do is we have to just look at the kinds of things that we can reason about. So there's a very famous argument, popularized by William Lane Craig, that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And it's a fine argument. I mean, I've often called it the worst of the best arguments for the existence of the universe having a cause, which you then show as a creator. But there's kind of an alternative version that you can run, which is just as justified as far as I'm concerned, which is everything that begins to, or every natural thing that begins to exist has a natural cause. Well, I mean, that's totally reasonable. I mean, we have all of this experience of this happening. If a chair begins to exist, well, what caused it to exist? There was like some atoms that bumped into other atoms because, the atoms in the carpenter's hand bumped into the atoms of the wood and then there's some natural process that can be accounted for via, natural stuff. And so if it's the case that every natural thing that begins to exist has a cause, if the universe is natural, then we could therefore reason that it has a natural cause. And if the universe did not begin to exist, then we don't need to explain where it came from. So I think that there are good reasons to think that the universe, in fact, if it had a beginning, if it did begin to exist, then its cause must be natural. I also think that we have good reason to trust that the scientific process will eventually find these kinds of the kinds of conclusions, like, did the universe begin to exist? Did it not begin to exist? And there's also, so this is all to say, I think we have good reason to think that it's at least a live possibility that the universe, that the origins of the universe, if it had one, are natural. But more than that, there are problems with the divine being having caused the universe. Perhaps the biggest problem, and the one that I find most disturbing, is that the universe is, it's space, it's time, it's matter, it's energy, it's all these stuff. So whatever caused the universe to exist, if it's some sort of mind, it must have done so without time existing. And I have a very hard time understanding what it means for anything to do something if there's no time at all, no time in which to do it, right? Supposedly we have this being that exists timelessly. And what does that mean? It means it doesn't change. It can't do anything. And yet somehow it's able to do something. Well, that seems like an awful big problem to me. In fact, I don't even know what it would mean for there to exist something that has a mind in a timeless state of affairs, right? If it's sitting there, it's not thinking, because thinking is a process that happens in time. So it just exists, but it has a mind somehow, but it doesn't, it's not thinking thoughts. It's just very unclear what it would mean for something like you and I, or perhaps not like you and I, something with a mind, with agency, with a will, with intention, to even exist timelessly. And so, unless we can get past that issue, I think that there's going to be a real hard time. I think that anybody who will propose an intentional creator will have a very hard time getting past that stumbling block, this problem of timelessness.
Well, I mean, that would be the concept of God, though, is that our human brain cannot fathom the idea of God. That's what makes him the supreme almighty, right? That's what makes him bigger than us. That's why we're here and not there doing what he does, right? But how would you define natural?
Yeah, this is actually a point of contention, apparently, according to philosophers. Namely, it's and the reason I say that, I mean, there's an obvious way to do this. Just say a thing is natural if it can, in principle, be described by some laws of nature, right? Gravity is natural because there's, Newton's universal law of gravitation or whatever. Any chemical process is natural because chemistry can be described by, various subatomic particles doing stuff in a natural way with equations. And so there's an issue, namely that if a thing exists, one could imagine that you could describe it mathematically, or you could describe it in some sort of quantified way, that you could do science to it. And so is it the case that if ghosts were real, suppose for a moment that ghosts are real, is it the case that we could describe them mathematically, or that we could describe them using experiments? Could we do experiments on ghosts? If so, does that make them natural?
Can you repeat the pattern, right?
Can you repeat I mean, like, as far as I'm concerned, if ghosts are real and they can like knock stuff off of, shelves or whatever, then it seems like that. Oh, they can apply a force. Well, forces are things that we understand very well, and we've understood very well since Newton. So clearly, there's something natural happening with the ghost. So the only way that I can say that a thing would be not natural if it's just completely disconnected from what we think of as the universe or as reality. It exists in some other kind of way that's disconnected from this reality. And perhaps there's some way that it can influence our reality without our reality influencing it. Because, in principle, you could imagine that if we could influence it, then surely we could describe it naturally. But maybe if only it can influence us, then maybe not.
What about gravity then? Because we essentially measure gravity based on the theory of gravity, right? Like how we measure the fall, 9 point something, yada, yada, yadas. Yeah. But can we still prove gravity is gravity? Well, I mean, isn't that, I think that's another issue within the concept of the theory of gravity is like, you can't really prove it, but we just measure this thing and call it gravity.
So the distinction, and this is a problem for a lot of people who aren't involved in either debate spaces or in the sciences, which is we like to think of like science as proving things. And the way that you'll hear Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about things is science has proven X, right? But that's not what science does. Science isn't really in the business of proving things. Science is in the business of providing evidence. And as far as I'm concerned, there's not really much that we can prove at all about, like, with science, without science, whatever. There's not much we can prove. What we can do is we can accumulate lots and lots of good reasons to believe that something is true. We can get lots and lots of evidence. And science is very, very good at that. So as far as gravity is concerned, we have like exceptionally good evidence that the way that that gravity is a thing, and in fact, it's a thing that Einstein described, 111 years ago, right? Or 111 years ago. And so because, he had this idea, we go out and we test it, that provides evidence for this idea. And we've now done that for over 100 years, and every single time it comes back right. And so that's good evidence. Is it proof? No, of course not. I mean, I can't even prove that you exist. You could just be a figment of my imagination. But
maybe I am.
I have right, but I have good evidence that you are, because we had email exchanges, and as far as I know, AI is not good enough to simulate, our plus long conversations. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why I think that you actually exist, but I can't prove it. And so I think when we're talking about subjects like these, we really have to talk about evidence, not proof.
Okay, but couldn't somebody make that claim for a creator, a god, and utilize that same argument that you're saying for it's not proof of gravity, it's just evidence of gravity? Couldn't somebody make the same claim to say there's evidence of God? Maybe not proof. I can't prove it to you 100%, but I have evidence. Yeah, sure.
But, and so that's the point of contention. I don't think that there's any particularly compelling evidence for a God existing. That's the issue.
Okay.
I mean, like, so. And maybe I can just frame this. Look, I'm not going to come out here and say I can prove with 100% certainty that there is no God. What I'm going to say is that if you want to believe in something that's like not like, this paper towel, I don't have to convince you that I was eating fudge. I don't have to convince you that this paper towel exists, because you can just see it, right? Like there's not a whole lot of evidence required to prove that it exists. But if you want to make the claim that there is in fact a creator, and not only is there a creator, that creator has certain properties, it created the world and it has certain desires for how the world can be and so on, then it seems like that this is an evidentiary or a claim that needs evidence. And it doesn't just need, I heard somebody tell me this kind of evidence. It needs like good evidence, in the same way that, when what's his face? Georges Lemaitre, he was the Belgian priest / physicist who first proposed the Big Bang. That was a big claim. It was a big deal. Like that's not something that goes lightly. And so it took until the 60s before we had good enough evidence to say, oh, this is a thing that we can reasonably believe is true. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a question about evidence. And if the person who is defending a creator has good evidence, then sure, then they win the debate. And if I have good evidence, then I win the debate. It's not about proving, as far as I'm concerned.
Wouldn't evidence still also be based on the person's belief of the evidence, right? Like, you showed me a paper towel, but maybe I thought it was a piece of paper, right? So even at that, it still comes into perspective of the individual.
Yeah,
to a degree.
Of course. So I mean, like, this is just the case when we're having these kinds of discussions, when we're engaging in debates like this. There generally has to be some agreed upon ground rules is not the right word, but there's some agreed upon like somewhere to some level of connection where we can at least agree on something. So like if I'm talking with somebody who doesn't think anybody exists and I'm just a figment of their imagination and they're just a brain in a vat, there's nothing I could tell them that would convince them otherwise, because they just say, that you're just a hallucination trying to convince me that I'm wrong.
Right.
So there has to be some agreed upon basis for what counts as evidence and what doesn't. So like, if your neighbor, if we're talking about the nature of the Big Bang and your neighbor says, hey, I had this dream last night that, Vishnu came down and told me the Big Bang is fake. Well, like, that's testimony, but it's not really good evidence. And I think I would hope that we would all agree that that's just not good evidence for these kinds of questions. But on the other hand, if 1,000 scientists over the course of decades measure some, I don't know, something about black holes, and they show that those black holes have certain properties and they can only have those properties if we ourselves are in a black hole, well, that'd be evidence that we live in a black hole. No, it wouldn't be proof, but it would at least be evidence, and it'd be better evidence than your neighbor telling you that they had a dream once.
Like a more likely then.
Yeah, it's just, and of course, like the quality of the evidence is of course subjective. But I hope that anybody that I talk to, we can at least find some common ground on like what counts as quality evidence. And we do this in the court system all the time, right? Like if you're looking at through somebody's text messages and they like say, haha, I killed that person /S, and they say, aha, that's an admission. Well, okay, but /S means sarcasm, right? So like, that probably wouldn't fly in a court system. And so, we have, we're all intelligent people. We have ways of evaluating evidence. If there is disagreement about the quality of the evidence, then we can talk about that. But I would hope that, there is some common ground there.
Well, and I think there is still like a subjectivity to that too. Like you have to be willing to accept even so much of a theory. Like if you're saying we have evidence of a black hole, it could still be, okay, maybe it's not a solid answer, but by this theory of how black holes operate, we would believe that seeing these stars do this in the sky and this type of warping, whatever, that a black hole exists because of this theory. So even, and I think even Christians would say the same thing, that the theory of God would still be based on this belief system, and it still wraps back around to a theory. So I see the debate stands in the same calculations, different direction to a degree.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. So when we're having these conversations, unless you are, am I allowed to not literally slander, but say mean things about people here?
Yeah.
Okay, so unless you're a scumbag like Darth Dawkins, most of these conversations are about internal consistency. I.e., there are facts of the matter about the world, and we want to check to see if our idea, whether it's that there's a creator that created the world, or whether that there's some natural process that created the world, or what have you, that is internally consistent. And that idea that we have is going to have a whole bunch of different what are they called? Auxiliary. Is that the right pronunciation?
Auxiliary.
Anyway. It's hard to say, right? Auxiliary.
You actually just made me stop and think. Like,
I'm sorry.
Wait, is it auxiliary?
Auxiliary
would be like ammo, isn't it, or something like that?
Auxiliary, I think, is correct. Yeah, no, that's right.
You know what? We're both dumb. I don't care.
Exactly. So anytime that you have an idea, there's some auxiliary like premises or hypotheses or assumptions you have to make. And so it's not about you just assume that gravity is a certain way, and then you check your observations against that. There's like a whole web of things that are interconnected. And so the question is about how coherent is my web that I'm building, and and including the facts about the world, versus how coherent is somebody else's web, because we're all going to have like a web of assumptions that are tying together. And the way that you can show a worldview or a theory or a model or whatever it might be is not a good one is if you can find inconsistencies in that web. Or alternatively, if my web can better account for whatever is out there, i.e. maybe it requires fewer assumptions in the web to account for something, or maybe there's just some fact of the world that your theory doesn't say it's true, it doesn't say it's false, but it just doesn't say anything about it, whereas my theory specifically says something about it and it gets it right. So those are ways that you can compare these kinds of ideas about, facts of the world, or even things as mundane as like which topping on pizza is best. It's, we all come with built-in assumptions, and we just have to check that they're kind of internally consistent and that they make the best predictions about the way the world is. So, I mean, I agree. Like, every worldview, every theory is going to come with hidden assumptions. It's just a matter of making sure that those all kind of stick together and that the evidence is in line with all of them.
Like running an internal critique. I know that we do that strongly here in the debate space. They take one thing you say and then critique it based on other things that have been said, and then prove inconsistency, so on and so forth.
It's exactly that.
But could you essentially go both ways? Could you still accept both theories of both a creator and a Big Bang theory?
Yeah, sure. So in fact, the guy that I mentioned, Georges Lemaitre, the Belgian guy who created the Big Bang, who he didn't call it that at the time. That was a name that came up 50 years later or 30 years later. But the guy who came up with this idea, he was a I want to say he was some sort of priest. I think he was like a Lutheran priest of some kind. He was a religious man. And, I don't think he ever said this, but almost certainly in his mind, he's like, there was this, he called it the primeval atom, right? There was this primeval atom that exploded. That's not the right word, but it exploded and created the world. And I'm sure in his mind, he was thinking, that's what God was doing. That's how God made the world. And so surely these two things are not mutually incompatible until you get to, at least on face, they're not mutually incompatible. You could definitely have that position. I think that there are reasons why you shouldn't hold that position, but I don't think, like, at least just from the get-go, that's a necessarily bad position. I just think that there's better ones.
Like, I could still accept the science. I could still accept it and say, okay, I am a big fan of evidence and showing proofs, but that doesn't change my belief system in God per se.
Sure.
Right. I think you could still roll with that. I don't think there's anything.
So I think that's generally right. I think that there is like a version of God, which is like the hands-off, no touchy kind of God. That probably you can make perfect sense of. And you could add that to your view. And I still don't think you should, because you're adding something unnecessarily, but you could add that to your view, and it probably wouldn't wouldn't contradict the evidence that we have. But the moment your creator starts to have properties or starts to, say, interfere in our world, maybe you are, I don't know, maybe you're Muslim, and you believe that not only did this creator create the world, but also this creator 1400 years ago told a man in Saudi Arabia that the moon was split in two. Well, now we have a problem, right? So I think that if you want to say that there's a creator that's super hands-off, just created the world and then went off to go buy milk and never came back, then sure, that could be compatible with the evidence until we get to the problem of time. But once we start talking about a God that loves us, or a creator that loves us, or wanted to create us for whatever reason, that becomes more problematic in my view.
Well, then, I mean, what explains, if you'll oblige me on this one, like, what explains our individual identities? I guess our souls, for instance, of some degree. How I would look at it as a soul. I'm sure you could explain it with chemicals to another realm, or brain synapses going a different direction. But how would you explain that we're not all? We all don't look alike. We all don't think alike. We all do all of these different things. How would you explain that differentiator in terms of, is it just chemicals? Is it just genealogy? Is it just something? But I would think that I don't know, does that make, am I getting somewhere with that?
No, I know what you mean. So, I am I don't have an answer to the hard problem of consciousness. I don't think anybody does. Even people who are idealists, I don't think they have an answer. But the thing that makes the most sense to me, and again, biased because I was born in '93, is that I see a human brain, or a human really, as like a really sophisticated machine, like a really exceptionally sophisticated machine. Nothing's this sophisticated in the universe as far as we can tell, except maybe other living organisms. But like the human brain is like very sophisticated. But
right.
If it's like a computer, then the way I see it is that in some sense, the brain is like the hardware. It's like your motherboard. It's like your CPU. It's like all of these things. And then the stuff that you run on your computer, those things that's like, your Microsoft Word, your Excel, whatever. Those are like your thoughts that you have, or the mind, your decision, your will, your memory, etc. And so as far as I'm concerned, the reason why you're different from me is because you have slightly different hardware. And so, your hardware, maybe your hardware runs, I don't know, Microsoft or runs Photoshop just a tiny bit faster because, your hardware has an extra atom here and mine doesn't. Or maybe your hardware, you have a better memory than I do. So you have a little bit more RAM. And so, that framed your behavior, because instead of getting slapped on the wrist for not knowing your times table in second grade, you remembered your times table. And so that changed the way that you are, because now you have different memories. And so that changes your future behavior and so on. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just the kind of thing that you would expect when there are small differences in the beginning. Those small differences accumulate into different people.
Mm-hmm. So do you believe, are you like evolution happened? We started off as this one thing and then we maneuvered into another?
Yeah, I mean, like, as far as I'm concerned, this is a scientific fact. And if someone chooses to reject that, that evolution happened, like, may I introduce you to a short bus?
All right, so tell me then your theory of evolution, because I know there's kind of different type of directions we could go with that, but where does yours begin?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I'm not a biologist, and like there are people who are far more educated on this than I am. If you want to talk about black holes or the Big Bang, I'm your guy. But as far as I'm concerned, there's this, we all have DNA. Our DNA is all slightly different. Our DNA changes all the time. I recently found out, by the way, for those watching, sun damage from the sun is cumulative. There's a whole reason for this. This is why, like, even if you go outside for 5 minutes, if you go outside for 5 minutes every day, still cause skin cancer, even if you're only outside for 5 minutes. Anyway, but the reason I'm getting to this is that, for example, the sun's rays, the UV that the sun produces, it penetrates your skin. It can damage your skin, can damage your DNA. And so it can cause mutations. It can break apart strands of DNA. It can change DNA in certain ways. And those mutations, often they're repaired. Sometimes they cause cancer, right? The world that we live in is filled with things like that. The sun is just probably the easiest example. But, when you have inflammation, for example, this can cause mutations because it's an irritated site, basically. And your cells are constantly attacking other cells to, fight off stuff. And so that can cause mutations in your DNA too. And sometimes those mutations make their way down to your gametes, your sperm, your eggs, etc. And if those mutations, maybe sometimes they're good, maybe sometimes they're bad, whatever they are, they result in slight changes in your descendants. And, what's the saying? If you take enough inches, you get a mile, right? Mm-hmm. Small changes are hard to see over a single generation. But if you give me 100,000 generations of small changes, it starts looking awfully lot like a big change. And if you look at modern chimpanzees, bonobos, they are not so far from humans. They live in social groups. They use tools. They have thumbs. They're a little bit hairier than us, a little bit shorter. They have worse posture, a little bit smaller brains, but they're not so different. And so it just doesn't seem so far-fetched to think that, it's possible that there are long lost cousins. In the same way that I'm a little bit different from my cousins, humans are a little bit different from chimpanzees. And what that means is that, I share grandparents with my cousins. So us and chimpanzees, maybe we share great times 500,000 grandparents.
Then why did like chimpanzees or apes of any sort, why are they still existing alongside us if evolution would have them move towards us, to becoming us?
So what makes a mutation, or what makes a genetic change propagate and stick within the population, is whether or not that mutation is beneficial for the environment that the organism lives in. So, if a classic example, by the way, is like white people, like you and I, right? So we have light skin.
I'm not white. What are you talking about?
so we have light skin, and the reason we have light skin probably is something like there were some mutations that took place 10-ish, 12-ish thousand years ago that reduced the amount of melanin that we produced in our skin. And not us, but our ancestors, or at least some of our ancestors. And it turns out that if your ancestors are living, say, in the far north, then that would mean that having lighter skin gives you a better ability to produce vitamin D. So vitamin D, we don't produce vitamin D naturally. We get it from the sun's rays basically hitting our skin in a certain way, and then we get vitamin D. Vitamin D is necessary for life. Like, it is a necessary part of being alive. And so it turns out that if you're living in the north, where there's not a lot of sunlight, having dark skin, like all humans used to have, is a very quick way to die because you're just not making enough vitamin D. And so in that setting, getting that mutation is extremely beneficial. But if somebody had that, and I promise I'm getting to your question, but if you instead have light skin in sub-Saharan Africa, where our ancestors probably came from, now having light skin means that you're going to get skin cancer very, very quickly and die. So it's more about the relationship between the changes, the biological changes, and the environment. And so you can imagine, suppose that there was an organism, maybe it's an Australopithecus, whatever, some primate that lived 6 million-ish years ago, 7 million years ago. Now, that primate may have been spread over a fairly large geographic area. And as a result of natural weather events, natural climate changes, maybe there's an earthquake that split off some landmass, whatever it is, you can have a separation of the population into two groups, where one group has one climate and another group has a different climate. And now the mutations that each group will accumulate will be different based off of which is more beneficial in each climate. And so the idea is that the organisms that eventually became chimpanzees, or whose descendants became chimpanzees, the chimpanzee form was optimal for whatever condition it was living in, whereas our ancestors were from the same organism, but in a different climate or environmental condition, where it turns out being really, really smart and walking on two legs was beneficial. And so it's just a matter of, even though you may have had the same kind of stem, you can branch off depending on how the conditions change.
Well, hold up. What's the animal
That's a really long explanation. I'm sorry.
No. I appreciated that. But what's the thing where it was, I think it was a bird or something, where one thing happened in one area and then suddenly they all, like, it was like a group think thing, and they all started doing, oh my God, I can't remember.
Are you talking about lemmings?
Was it lemming? I don't know.
Like they jumped off a ledge?
No.
Okay, because that's a myth, by the way.
No, I thought I forget what kind of animal it was, but something happened where they discovered how to open something, and they all started eating things a certain way. And then, but it was
it an
only
experiment of some kind?
No, it just, oh my God. I've heard this story like a couple times. I know the chat's going to probably at some point call me an idiot or give me the thing that I'm looking for. Maybe, yeah. Was it 100 month? I don't know.
Oh, were you talking about the 100 month? Like it's like there's like it's a thought experiment where you like put like 5 monkeys in a room, and then like you like shock one, or you shock them whenever they go try to reach for something, and then you remove them one. Okay, maybe it's
no. The thing happened like naturally, like one of the animals or birds or whatever it was started cracking open something, and then next you know, like they discovered that hundreds of thousands of miles
like
away.
Ravens?
I don't
or like
remember.
crows of some kind.
Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe it was something completely wrong. I don't know. But I thought the concept was, I don't know. I could be totally wrong. I'm going to just forget I said anything. But I'm just still in the process of trying to I get wanting to change based on where I'm at, my environment, and so on and so forth. But I would think that primates, to some degree, we're still in the same realm of humans, right? But yet we still, I don't know, where did
Unless
primates...
they were separated, right?
Well, and I guess maybe that's my question. Like, where is that article of separation? Because I couldn't imagine primates being scattered all over, even if we believe the, what is it, Pantera? Was it
Pangea?
Pantera? Pangea, thank you.
Pantera is a metal band.
I'm all over the place.
You're okay.
But like, even if we believe it all started off as one thing and then eventually split around, I would still think that there would have to be some form of evolution to happen for it to, like, primates from one area would go this far to where we are standing and walking, we're intellectual, we use everything, right? Versus they're like chimpanzees are completely stuck in this, because I would think that for them at this point, it would be still beneficial for them to learn to walk upright.
I mean, they live
Yeah.
in trees. Why do they need to walk upright?
Well, but what is different between where they live? I mean, they live among the same arenas as us.
I mean, and look, I'm no early human biologist, but as far as I'm aware, humans developed to walk upright and developed real big brains. One of the reasons is to throw things. The other reason is because the environment that we were living in was a savanna. It makes a lot more sense to walk around in a savanna when there's not a lot of trees. But if your cousins, if they live on the other side of the river where there's a lot of trees, well, they don't need to walk upright. But on your side of the river, maybe you do, because there's just not enough room over there. So, you spread out, and your descendants, it turns out that if they can walk upright for just a little bit longer, then they have a better chance of, I don't know, catching their prey or, running away from a lion, because you can't escape up a tree if there's no trees around. And so it could be as simple as just a river. I mean, there are examples of evolutionary, of speciation happening, speciation being the process of one species splitting off into two, just because there's a mountain in the way. Like this, in fact, there's a phenomenon, I think it's called like circular speciation, where you have an organism, like a bat or something like that, or like a lizard, and it, for whatever reason, it's living in some area and there's a mountain nearby that's hard to climb up. And so the organisms start to spread out one way around the mountain for whatever reason. And this happens over many, many generations, because they're not adventurers. They're just kind of trying to live. And as the population grows, they spread out around the mountain. But by the time they get to by the time the set of organisms gets to the other side of the mountain, they're no longer in contact with the organisms that were on the first side of the mountain. And so they don't need to reproduce. And so over another 1,000 generations, say, their genes will just naturally drift, just because of these mutations that I was talking about. Not because it's necessarily more beneficial, but they'll just naturally drift as they're going around the mountain, as they're still spreading out. And then by the time they get back, now you have two separate species, just because they were separated from each other for so long, even though they came from the same place. It's just the natural genetic drift. So that kind of thing can happen.
But how did this all, let's tie it all together then.
Sure.
How did all of these species, even it all started with a big bang, right? But yet all of these species were continuously side by side, different species all together at once, right? I mean, you could go even
maybe it's
dinosaurs,
around a lake, not a mountain. I'm sorry.
Well, either way would matter
Whatever
to me,
it is.
but they're all operating together, and I guess you could say maneuvering within evolution together. Where did it start, and where did the split happen, and how did this split become thousands of different species?
Yeah, so I mean,
and I take it back to the Big Bang concept, because if it all started and then it's cyclical and all of these things, then like where did that begin? The beginning of these species, and why are there so many?
Yeah, I mean, so the whole history. So you have, there's a whole there's a song about this. It aired on a sitcom called The Big Bang Theory, 20 years ago at this point or whatever. I'm sure we all know the song at this point. It's one of the most popular sitcoms of all time, I think. So there's like 13.8 billion years ago or so, Big Bang happens. Who knows what caused it? We can talk about that, but who knows what happened? Who knows what caused that? I don't know why I can't talk. It's all the caffeine. And then we wait like another 9 billion years before the Earth exists. So like there's just stars exploding and galaxies forming and black holes and all that stuff. And then eventually there's just like this little yellow star that forms somewhere in the outskirts of a mediocre sized galaxy. And it just happens to be that there's about a dozen, a little bit less than a dozen planets. Most stars have planets, it turns out. This star happened to form planets in just the right way, just because, if you have a trillion planet or a trillion stars, then one of them is going to get lucky, and there will be a rocky planet that's just the right distance away from its host star. And so that happened to be Earth. Earth happened to be just the right distance away from the host star. And, it just happened to be the case that it was the right temperature, the right size, etc. And so now you have a planet, and the planet can have water on it or it cannot. Our planet happens to have water on it. We can talk about where it got water, but it has water. And once you have water and rocks are just silicon and nitrogen and carbon and, it's just stuff. It turns out that chemistry can happen, and it can happen pretty easily. Now, the details of how you go from basically goop to a very, very simple cell, I don't know. Again, not a biologist. If you ask a biologist, they could tell you that, I don't know. I think I heard from a biologist friend that it's something like 9 things need to happen for life to happen. I'm gonna get the numbers wrong. 9 things need to happen in order to form life, and we figured out how 7 of the 9 have worked. And there's still a few things that have been left mysterious, but we've gotten almost all of it down. So who knows? But maybe we'll get it. Maybe we'll figure it out in 50 years. But so now I have these very, very basic cells. Now these cells, they are so simple. All they do is they they consume raw materials and then they divide. And they consume raw materials and then they divide. And they take up space. So as they divide, as they consume raw materials, they're going to spread out. And by spreading out, they'll end up in different environments. And those different environments will confer different advantages for different mutations. And so you end up with the cells becoming different kinds of cells. And some of those cells will, figure out that they can, just by sheer random chance, that if they absorb another cell, they can steal its nutrients. And now you have carnivores and so on and so forth. So this is to say, the process of small random changes plus selecting for the things that are really beneficial is a really good way to generate change. And so as far as I'm concerned, once you have life and once you have this ability to reproduce and change slightly, I think that probably accounts for all of the diversity that we see.
Everything that you've said, though, I would say like this one star just so happened to pull just the right way, and this one rock just so happened to have all of the right chemistry, and this one thing just so happened to create the right thing, and this one thing just so happened to do the right this, right? That sounds like a lot of sheer luck.
Well, okay, but hear me out. Let's say that 1 in every 100 stars has a planet like Earth. So it's pretty rare. Has a planet even the size of Earth. Maybe it's too hot, maybe it's too cold, but it's a planet even the size of Earth. Well, okay, there's a trillion stars out there. So almost all of them, something like 10 billion trillion, will have a planet the size of Earth. Okay. Now, what are the odds that one of those planets is not too hot? Maybe it's only 1 in 1,000. Okay. Now we have 100 million trillion planets instead of 100, or now we have, 10 million trillion planets rather than 10 billion trillion planets. Okay, still plenty of planets. Now, what are the odds that that planet has water on it for one reason or another? Maybe it's 1 in 1,000 again. So now you have 10 trillion planets that have water on them, and they're the size of Earth, and they're the right temperature. Okay, now what are the odds that, and so you can see where this goes. Like it was going to happen somewhere. It just happened to happen here. But that's like saying, the right analogy is something like, when one person wins the lottery, they're really lucky. But when somebody wins the lottery, it was inevitable, right? Like somebody was going to win the lottery. It sounds like
what is it? Dumb and Dumber, and he's like, so you're saying there's a chance, right?
Exactly.
It's like,
exactly. There's a chance, and the chance is really high.
Right. So she's like, there's 1 in a million, and he's like, oh, there is a chance, right? But okay, all right, I'll accept it. Okay, here's what I want to do, because I think I'm kind of like out of pieces that I can throw at you of curiosities, right? But I'll let the others come and play and ask their questions. Hold on, let me do this. Join here. I should have done this earlier. So if you would like to join up on panel to ask questions, provide commentary, you don't necessarily have to be combative towards Dr. Blitz. You can be team Dr. Blitz, and maybe you have some other pieces to add. But you can start hitting that link now and heading backstage. In the meantime, let's do some supers. We've got Base Moon and their new membership. We've got Coriolis Tony and his new membership. Tom Carpenter, of course, with his little drive-by. Love you all. Have fun tonight. Mater Nation equals greater nation. Yes, we are all greater now that you are all here. Inquisitive Infidel says background radiation and imperfect copies equals cancer. Any thoughts to that from you?
I mean, it's true. Most of the time when you get like irradiated, the mutations aren't particularly nice. The changes, the copies are not particularly great. This is why cancer happens. But sometimes they are very beneficial. That's all you need.
When can they be beneficial?
The example I gave would be like the kind of mutation that leads to light skin if you live way up north.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Inquisitive also says, if the US from England, why is there still England? What?
I mean, yeah, that's the question. It's like this is parodying a common objection to evolution, which is something like, if humans came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? Well, it's just because we're the descendants from them. That doesn't mean they stop existing. So that's the.
Yeah, but I would still think that, I mean, have monkeys pushed any more forward than what they were 1,000 years ago, per se?
Well, 1,000 years is really short time on an evolutionary scale. But
Okay.
if you go compare chimpanzees, bonobos, to say Australopithecus or any one of these other very old primates that may have been common ancestors between us and them, yeah, they're very different. They're noticeably different and more efficient at what they do. A better analogy here, rather than if the U.S. from England, why is there still England? Think of both the U.S. and Australia descend from England. Now, the U.S. and Australia are different, right? We have different accents, we have different cultures, but we do share something in common, just like how humans and chimpanzees share some things in common, even though we are different from each other. And that's because we share a common ancestor, but we've changed since then.
It would be like, I don't know if one. I don't know. That's a hard time, because even the difference between, let's say you were talking about the skin tone. So the difference between white people, black people, Asian people, but we're still all human.
Yep. Yeah, we're the same species still. So the way to think about this is, and different species, like to determine what makes a different species is actually kind of vague. Like we kind of use this idea of, can they reproduce together? If so, then they're the same species. But that's not always quite right, because like horses and donkeys can reproduce together, and sometimes they produce fertile offspring as mules. It's rare, but it doesn't. But
horses and for some reason I heard like horses and dogs, and my brain just went into total stop mode, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. So, okay, but my apologies.
So it's a little bit of a gray area about what makes us two different things, different species. But the point is that at a certain point, there will be enough changes that the two things are just not compatible anymore. And at that point, they're probably different species if they can't produce offspring anymore. Humans, it turns out that surface level changes, like think about like nose size, think about like eye shape, think about skin color. Surface changes are generally happen very quickly, or at least much more quickly than deeper changes. And this is probably pretty intuitive. The environment is going to affect the surface more than it's going to affect the inside. So changes at the surface can happen more quickly because they can affect your ability to survive and reproduce more quickly. Whereas like changes on your internal organs might be slower. But this is all to say, the apparent large differences between myself and like, I don't know, a small Thai man, those are very surface level differences. If you look inside, our organs are basically the same, right? Our brains are basically the same. And so even though the surface changes do look significant because we're attuned to them, they're not actually that big. Like humans are actually very, very similar to each other genetically, far more so than many other animals.
Well, I was gonna say, aren't we like almost like 50% identical in was it like DNA
bananas
or something? Yeah, I mean, so how do you explain that difference, but yet so much similar? Does that make sense?
So humans are more closely related to each other than like basically any other animal is related to the other animals of its species. We are extremely closely related to each other because there were probably some bottleneck events that reduced our population significantly. But the point is that we look, so, people look very, very different to each other from our perspective, because we're really, really good at picking up differences between humans. But if I showed you two chimpanzees, you probably couldn't tell them apart because your brain's not wired to pick out the facial differences of chimpanzees. Your brain is wired to pick out the facial differences of humans, because it turns out if you can tell your brother apart from, your enemy, that's a really, really useful thing to be able to do. Right. But it doesn't matter if you can tell the difference between chimpanzees. That's not going to matter. So that's why there's this bias that humans are vastly more different. All chimpanzees look the same, but humans were so diverse. We just aren't picking up their differences. I'm sure they don't pick up ours.
I mean, yeah, okay. I can bite on that. I mean, if you are around chimpanzees all day, you would.
Probably, yeah.
Right.
But we're around humans all day.
Yeah, that would make sense. Or it's going to sound incredibly racist, but like some people would say, oh, I can't tell Asian people apart, or I can't
Sure.
tell this type of people apart, or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's the same thing,
But
actually. Yeah.
that makes sense because if you're not around them all day, those features aren't the only thing you see is you're different from me. And that's
Yep.
all we need to see. Whereas if I'm a white person, I would want to elaborate or understand the differences of the people around me that are also white, because you're right, I need to recognize the difference between my brother and my enemy, or even like I would want to know who my brother is, because for mating potentials I would
Yep.
want to stay away from my brother, right? So that makes sense as well. Okay, fair enough. And again, if anybody wants to join the open panel, I've got a few backstage already. The link is being dropped into the live chat. All you got to do is click it and head backstage. Okay. And Inquisitive also, Inquisitive has a lot of questions. Ring species have neighbors that can breed, but distant members can't. Explain
This
that.
is what I was referring to with like the mountain and the animals going around it. They're called ring species. And the point is that if you imagine each species, like you have species A, like think of like a clock. Species at the 12 position can mate with the species at the 1 position, and maybe the species at the 11 position, but it can't mate with the species at the 6 position. But the 6 can mate with the 7 and the 5. The 5 can mate with the 6 and the 4, and so they can mate with the ones next to them, but they can't mate with the ones far away. And so it's called a ring species. It's a really neat phenomenon.
But then what about the one that makes it all the way around the circle?
So yeah,
and then they're technically neighbors.
It could be the case. It could be the case that they can't mate at all. But it can also be the case that you can have, if this happens fast enough, that you can have the whole ring be developed and then all just kind of drift in a way that everybody always stays compatible with their neighbors. So I imagine, I think both things can happen. But again, not a biologist.
Right. I know we have dived into that realm that you've.
Yeah, I mean, I like talking about it, but it's just people are going to know more about it than I will, which is fine.
Right. I do appreciate you at least answering, because I still learn something new every day. And Inquisitive also says evolutionary forces operated on life since before the chemicals could even be considered life. Life then finds niches and competes for each niche. They diversify and change for millions of years. Dumb that down for me.
Yeah, so I think, and this might even be contentious, but the claim that they're making is that evolution happened before there were even cells. Namely, evolution is just whatever is able to replicate most wins out and takes over. And so you can imagine that like you have a petri dish, not with any living things in it, just with chemicals. And maybe one of the chemicals is like an enzyme that like causes a chemical reaction to happen than another chemical. And so then eventually you would expect that chemical kind of occupies the whole, or that chemical reaction occupies the whole petri dish. Even if it's not alive, it's still just like catalyzing chemical reactions. And so that's all that's being said here. And then the bit about finding niches and competing for niches, I mean, think about, imagine that that all of the life that you've ever known, or all of the life in this thought experiment, is like in a cave. And so there's like a little river running through the cave, and then there's like some moss hanging from the cave, and there's some rocks in the cave. And so like, there will be some life in the river, and some life on the rocks, and some life that like eats the moss. But the point is if you have 2 fish or 2 amphibians or whatever it is in the river, they're competing against each other. They're competing for the river niche, right? And so if one species does well, the other species will have less food to eat. And similarly with the moss. So in an ecosystem, you'll have different ways that an organism can survive, different resources that an organism can take advantage of. And so that's where the competition comes from. You'll have organisms competing for the same resources, for that same niche. And then through the process of random mutation, and through a few other more complicated processes, you can get diversity. And that the life becomes, more different from itself, and it can spread out and occupy different niches. So you can have one organism that was originally well suited for one niche. If it spreads out too much, it might find itself in another niche. And so only the members of its species that can actually do well in that niche, maybe it can eat a different kind of moss rather than the moss that it was used to. Those organisms will survive better. And so now you have 2 different kinds of organisms which each eat different kind of moss.
So, I mean, this could essentially be the difference between a carnivore.
I did
carnivores and herbivores, right?
Yeah.
Like or even how humans went into hunter gatherer or went into farming type of stuff,
Yep.
right? Different things like that. Okay. All right. I'll bite on it. All right. Again, last call. If you want to join the panel, start hitting the link, get on up there. I'm going to go ahead and bring the boys up now. You can still hit it afterwards too. But if you want to be on the first dibs, now's the time to go. Are you ready to meet your panel, sir?
Sure.
All right. We've got a few back there for you. Here we go.
Certainly just not. I'm an adult. You shouldn't have sex with anyone until at least they
All right, we've got some of the regulars here. I do know that Ant is probably going to be Team Dr. Blitz. I know he said so backstage as well, but it's good to have somebody at least still here to either add further or give you a compliment, because I know
Love that.
I know Clay is on the Christian side. Salty Santa can play both directions. Kraut is definitely going to come in on the Christian side. Balderson is an Odinist. So I think he's going to fall in that there is still a creator of some sort, correct? Yeah. Okay. All right. And if you do want to hit the link, it's in the chat. I don't know how many times I have to say that. You have to be blind if you're talking in the chat and still unable to find the big fucking words that say open panel Q&A, join here with an arrow. I'm not sure how else to explain that to you there, Felix. Anyways, I don't know you, but you've been bugging me in the chats for links. So yeah. All right. Anyways, let's kick it off with Clay. I know you've got some good questions. I know you've got some good theories, and I know you've got some good pushback. So away with you, Clay. Go for it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Dr. Blitz, for coming in and having this conversation with us on this wonderful Throwdown Thursday. So I actually, do sit on the side of believer. And when it comes to, did the earth itself come to an existence because of a creator? I would say yes, obviously. So I don't agree with you. But I did appreciate that you said, you could be wrong. That's muy powerful. And, that's always a huge plus when we're having these conversations. Obviously, I could be wrong too, right? But I would like to perhaps get into a little bit of a conversation about that regarding more specifically the actual creation of the earth itself, because I know we could go to the evolution stuff, which you guys had a lot of conversation about. And there's plenty we could talk about in that. And then we could also talk about the quote unquote Big Bang or whatever happened with that. But I would like to focus more specifically on the creation of the earth itself or non-creation. So when we consider whether the earth was created or not, just to make sure of your position, and I think you actually mentioned this, you're not saying that it couldn't have been formed. You're just saying that a mind specifically was not something involved in that forming.
Yeah, my position is that it formed via some natural gravitational process.
Okay. And so in that, I think the hardest question for anyone to answer in these types of conversation is going to be the one that I like. Do you know what the backside of the moon looks like?
Yeah, I've seen pictures.
So you've seen pictures of it, but you don't know.
I mean, by the same token, I could say that, I don't know that Australia exists because I've never been there. But
Well-
like obviously Australia exists, right?
Well, Australia is fake too. We all know that.
Except for our friendly Australians that come in the chat around 2 a.m. We love you, all of you.
They don't
We
know that
believed
they
in
still
you.
live on a
CIA assets.
but the truth is that you don't know, and I don't know, obviously, without that personal experience of seeing it happen. Now we go by the evidence, right? To provide proof for ourselves.
Well, careful. Evidence never provides proof. It provides you reasons to believe things. But for example, suppose I went up to go see the backside of the moon. How do I know it's not like a hallucination what I'm seeing? Or how do I know it's not a projection or a NASA CGI, right? Like the point is, you can get evidence in different ways. I think that seeing a picture of something as mundane as the backside of the moon is probably good evidence to know, quote unquote, what the backside of the moon is. And when I say no, by the way, I don't mean with certainty. I mean you have a good reason to believe that it's true.
Are there valid answers to be provided
for the what's at the backside of the moon?
What the backside of the moon is, where do monarch butterflies go when you see them flying off? Are there valid answers?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like there is a fact of the matter that the moon is a certain, unless you think that all of reality doesn't exist, which that's
right. So at some point
there is
we
something.
do need a conclusion, right?
Right.
We need an actual definitive answer.
Can you be certain of that conclusion? That's the problem. And I think that you can't be certain, but you can be damn close.
Yeah, I think well, see, that's why I wanted to open up with the backside of the moon thing, because this really does open that up. Can we be certain? And this is the question: can we be certain of what the backside of the moon looks like? And the answer to that, to me, is yes, because I could actually perhaps go to the moon and then go around to the backside of it. Would that be?
But how do you know that your brain hasn't been hijacked by aliens sending false images to your eyes, even if you're standing there?
Well, yeah, I don't do the brain in the bat thing either.
Well, so my point is that like, I mean, like I agree, like the world exists, but what I'm saying is that there's an epistemic gap, and it's like I think that we're gonna have a really hard time saying with certainty that we can really say anything about the world, but we can operate as if we have certainty. Like I would 100% agree.
What's the best way to do that? What's the best way to do that?
I would say the best way to do that is using the scientific method.
The presenting of evidence, right?
Yeah. It can increase your credence to astronomical proportions so that you're so close to certainty. Perhaps not there, but you're very close.
Right, and that's where belief and knowledge come from, right? Providing the proofs or the evidence so that we can come to a conclusion or confidence in the proof. And the proof that we certainly, as an individual, obviously I can't, tell you where the water is and make you drink. I can tell you where the water is, but I can't make you drink. Right.
Just to be clear, and this may sound like a semantic distinction. I do distinguish between proof and evidence, or proof and confidence. You can prove things in mathematics. You can,
fair enough.
But I try not to use the word proof when we're talking about like the world around us, because you can prove. You don't really prove that gravity exists. You just provide really compelling evidence that it exists.
Yeah, and that's fair. And the person has to decide for themselves. And that's why I like that you came up here with this topic here. Obviously, like I said, I don't agree with you, but it is valuable for me and, well, everyone else, for you to be able to present your evidence, and then they can make that decision based on that. Now, when it comes to the evidence for the Earth not being created, I don't see that, right? So what I'm saying is, what you mentioned
talking specifically about the Earth.
Yeah, the Earth, right?
Okay, yeah,
right.
Sure.
Yeah, because like I said, we can go to the Big Bang or even evolution, but when we're providing our evidence, some of that evidence might be the mechanisms, right? Now I know you mentioned gravity and a gravitational process. But it is possible that the Earth, regardless of whether gravity exists or not, whether there's the weak force or not, whether there's the nuclear forces, whether there's all these, these four forces, all these things happening all the time, regardless of that, it is possible that it just came into existence without that, correct?
Yeah. So now I have to be annoying. We have to ask about what modal scope what modal scope we're talking about with regards to possibility. Is it logically possible? Sure. Logical possibility is very cheap. Basically, everything is logically possible.
Yeah.
If we're talking about physical possibility, absolutely not.
There
are laws of physics that prevent it. And then if you want to talk about some other modal scope, like some sort of metaphysical possibility, it's not clear what metaphysical possibility means. But suffice it to say, even if I grant that like there's some scope in which it's possible, I don't care if it's possible. I need the evidence.
Perfect evidence for you to choose that you're going to believe it, for proof, for confidence, whatever. So that's kind of the same way I feel about the extremely old Earth as well, because the thing is me personally, I recognize that there's also the possibility of what we might call multiple dimensions. I think that there's actually, scientific theories on how those would actually exist, and how even possibly to get to those places. So when it comes to more specifically the Christian ideology, and I know not everybody in Christendom agrees, and there's some folks like me who actually don't do the whole like as a whole Christendom thing either. But for people like me, I see it as a realm, right? Or another existence outside the bounds of the physical realm, where the physical realm is something of a creation. So obviously, like, this goes into what caused everything, but specifically the earth as well. So the possibility of another dimension, realm, whatever you call it, certainly is something that's discussed in scientific circles in theory. And that's really the way that I see it. And that for me, as well as many other Christians, is referred to as the spiritual realm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, my contention is, and I'm allowed to be, I'm not going to be mean, I'm allowed to be blunt though, right? Yeah, so like my contention is that if you wanted to come on and argue the claim that there isn't a creator, the worst way to do it is to argue that the earth is quite young. Because like if we're talking about evidence, it just is the case that all of the scientific data that we have points to the earth being extraordinarily old. I mean, like we could talk about radiometric dating, we could talk about ice core samples, we could talk about fossilization rates, we could talk about there's a thing where we can measure the lengths of a day over the course of geologic history, and how the length of a day has changed over since the earth has had a moon because of tides, basically. So there are an extraordinarily large number of different ways that we can show that the earth is much, much, much older than 6,000 years. And so
that's a horrible argument.
Easy.
Somebody,
not yet. Not
hold on, Joe. We're just going one at a time.
Okay. And so all I'm saying is that, and we could get into the details of these, but like it seems that as far as the things that we typically accept as evidence, if we're in a court, right, you would want to go if you find what you would call circumstantial evidence. It's not bad evidence. Like if you find somebody's blood at a scene, well, that's evidence that they were there, right? All of the kinds of things that we would use in court are the kinds of things that we would use in a scientific investigation, and all of those things lend themselves to an old earth.
No, I want to examine that for a couple of minutes, or not even a couple of minutes, maybe a minute.
Yeah, I would say start working on your wrap up.
Yeah, but when it comes to that particular process, it's a reliance on radio dating, right? Or radio.
Well, it's not just radio dating, right?
Okay. What else is there?
There's something, and there's a name for it. Basically, there's a kind of layering of mud that happens in certain lakes. Let me see if I can find it. I have this somewhere.
Well, even within the
it's called a varve. That's what it is.
Varve.
So a varve is like a deposition of sediment at the bottom of a lake, and it forms seasonally. And you can basically think of like the plants or like the algae at the top. It's going to grow more in spring and summer, and then they die off in winter, so they sink down to the bottom, and then more grows in summer, and then it dies off. So you can see like seasonally these layers deposit. And there's a lake that we can see in Japan that has like 75,000 layers of seasons happening. And so like and then you can go look at ice cores and you can see seasonal changes there, and you can see hundreds of thousands of layers of season changes happening. And so it's not just radiometric dating. Radiometric dating gets us to 4.5 billion years old. But if you look at basically any branch of science, you'll get to more than 10,000 years old.
So what specifically was that called again?
It's It's called a VARV, and the lake is called Lake Suigetsu, if I remember correctly.
Suigetsu.
Yes, Suigetsu. There's actually a museum there. It's in Japan.
China? Oh, Japan. Okay.
Yeah. There's actually a museum there because they it's not a global wonder, but it's a really neat thing.
Even still, like, so you're going by the layers of the VARV, but then you've also got carbon dating, radio dating, which ultimately, there's a problem within radio dating. I wanted to chat about that just a sec. And why is there this massive gap of distinction when it comes to? I think you know what I'm talking about. Massive gap that presents itself. It's like 50 to 5,000 years, or 5,000 years to 500,000 years. What is that about?
What do you mean gap?
So when they do the dating, specifically, they're watching the isotopes, right, and their decay rate, and they watch it for X period of time. But then they calculate, 500,000 years. How do they watch it for? Even I'll give the entire span of all of these theories that have more or less been going on 200 years. I'll give like a whole 200 years.
Radiometric dating was first proposed in like the early 1900s, so it's at best 100 years. Yeah, 100
years. I'll give a whole 200. How can you watch something for 100 or 200 years even, and then decide all of a sudden that what's happened 500,000 years ago?
So it's because we know the principles, right? The nature of radioactive decay is fairly well understood at this point. There are a few different kinds of radioactive decays that can happen that are common. There's alpha decay, beta decay, gamma decay, and then there's a few other kinds that are less common. But we know the mechanisms. We know why they happen. We know what makes them happen at the rate that they happen at. This has been pretty well understood since basically the 50s. And so you don't actually need to look at something for, like, let's just take, for example, uranium. A certain isotope of uranium, uranium-235, has a calculated half-life of about 730 million years. Now, you don't need to wait 730 million years to know that it's going to take 730 million years for half of it to decay away. Because what you can do is you can take, 10 grams of the stuff, and then you can put a Geiger counter next to it, and you can count how frequently is it decaying. And because we know the mechanism of decay, we can then use that data that we take for an hour, a week, whatever it is, and we can use that to extrapolate, using these known laws of physics, to how long it would take for the entire 5 or for 10 of those grams to decay into 5 of those grams or whatever it is. And this works. This mechanism, by the way, works extremely well for basically all of the radioactive isotopes that have short lifetimes. So some radioactive isotopes only live for a week, and those you can just see. And if we use the same method on those, we get the answer right. So we therefore have good reason to infer that when we use the method on something that decays slowly, we are still getting the answer right.
Okay. No, and I'll pass it off to somebody else. I just want to make sure to say this. The things that we propose could happen in the future doesn't necessarily mean that it's happened in the past. That's it.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I mean, I'm not gonna rebut something when there is last words. Like, you can have last words. It's fine.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. You guys can have fun a little later. Ant, I know you were probably Team Blitz, and I love you so much. Feel free, give your thoughts, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I didn't really hear anything I would contradict. I'm glad he's here to put this information out, because we got quite the audience that I think could hear it, even though they're going to really fight you tooth and nail for it.
Good. At least they'll listen, I hope.
So now I'm here to root for you more than anything else, and I'm happy to drop down if a creationist wants to come up and pick your brain, because it's probably going to be more fun.
No, Ant, you've earned your spot here, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right, I'll hand it off to Santa. We love you so much. I'm so glad you're here. I would not have this panel without you here, because I know this is a place that sits in your heart. So
yeah, it's the intersection of two things that I care a lot about, and sometimes that are at odds with each other, which is annoying in its own way. I also want to apologize. I didn't catch the first part. So may I ask a few questions, Dr. Blitz?
Please.
Are you pro or against abiogenesis?
I'm not a biologist, but my biologist friends tell me that they have good reason to think that it's like a real thing that happened.
Are you familiar with the occurrence happening with the spud cell, widely reported?
I heard about it.
University.
I haven't looked deeply into it, but I've heard about it. I saw the headlines.
And in short, for everyone else, it's essentially life or a functional cell with just using chemicals, organic, non-organic chemicals.
Ground up synthetic cell, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. And with that, I think that bears even more to the world wasn't created, because I think an argument, honestly, that a lot of creationists have had, and that I've had over years, was, well, you can't have something from nothing. You just get to go into this infinite regression and just say whatever. And it was a pretty good argument for those who had a deity creating. But now we're down to the turtles all the way down. Do you have a particular flavor of the Big Bang, Big Squash, Big Squirt, Big Belly Button, whatever thing, or do you think we came from a singularity?
I don't think that singularities are real in any sense, but beyond that, I don't think that there's particularly compelling enough evidence to determine what caused the Big Bang.
Right. Well, some of those cute symbols look familiar, but they're beyond me these days.
They're also backwards, so you can't. I can't be too mad at you.
Oh, I think they're backwards for you. I see they look right.
Yeah,
for me.
Does that look like a P?
Well, Sigma looks right.
Okay, then they're forwards.
Yeah, it looks fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
when you turn on mirror, like it only mirrors for you, not for us.
I definitely didn't turn on anything, so if it is mirrored, it's maybe the default.
Yeah, it's probably automatically, but it makes us feel normal when we're looking at ourselves as if it's a mirror versus the other way. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And my head's doing weird stuff. Now with then, the general physics understanding and everything, how the solar system came into place, how the moon just slid right into position, all of that has feasible arguments at worst. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly how the Earth formed, because we weren't there, and there's like maybe 5 different ways or a dozen different ways, whatever it is. Like we could see other planets forming. We've seen protoplanetary disks, and we have a whole bunch of different models for how these things can happen. So it might not be the case that we know exactly how Earth formed, but like of all of the ways that we know Earth could have formed, one of them is right. We just maybe don't know which one.
Now, I will probably get spears in my back for this one. So speaking as a scientist, you're not able to completely rule out the possibility that a universal mind or other type being, thought, whatever, you just use the methodology that you're finding as we go along in science. There's nothing to preclude that being caused by a motive force, is there?
I think that there are reasons to think that that's not the case, but they are not empirical reasons. These are reasons that rely on kind of philosophy of mind, or perhaps those kinds of things.
Starts moving outside the domain.
Right. So if you're doing science, then I mean, science is by definition it's at least the natural sciences, study of the natural world. And if you're trying to say that there could be something that is supernatural, well, then of course it's going to be outside of the realm of the natural sciences.
And just a fun one to poke Ant, and I hope you answer the way I hope you do. Do you find that anecdotal evidence is ever useful in the scientific method, say perhaps for formulating hypotheses?
I mean, sure. Like, I don't care how you formulate a hypothesis. Like, if you can form a hypothesis however you want. Now, you shouldn't use that as your source of data to check the hypothesis.
It's not evidence. Yeah, it's not evidence. Okay.
Actually, it is evidence. It's just weak evidence.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. With one more, if I may, Sarah. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So then, if you had a large study, significantly the same as a smaller study of n equals 1, can't you use the standard deviation in the larger study to suss out data from the individual study?
Maybe, but that's a really like your standard, the ability that you have to infer data from the individual is going to be very, very weak, very, very low power.
Oh yeah, I agree. I was just more arguing with Ant than anything. Thank you much. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you, Santa. I love you so much.
Does he argue that the Earth is a sphere, by the way? Because I see the Earth as an oblate spheroid. Is that like the shtick?
Sometimes when I first came onto the group, they accused me of saying the moon didn't exist. And so it's just kind of been a thing since. So
fair enough.
Actually,
go ahead.
The Earth is a geoid. Thank you.
True.
I love you guys so much. These are my boys. All right, let's go ahead and move along to Kraut. Kraut, are you situated back there?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't know. I got 3 different Wi-Fis, and when I switched it, I was in the middle of changing my picture, so it was blank, and I wouldn't go blank at all. I would either have my avatar or myself up. Anyways, all that said, I agree with Blitz. No, I'm just joking. No. I was gonna say. Yeah, no. So I'll say I don't know God exists. I believe God exists. There's no absolute proof that he exists or that he doesn't exist. But I'll go with the argument anyway. I know you just mentioned that we have observed planets being formed. I actually looked it up when you mentioned that, and it was either 2005. We saw that at 2025. I already forgot.
It was recent. Yeah, protoplanetary disks being emitted for the first time was recent.
Yeah. Now, like I'm under the impression that God didn't just clap his hands and the universe and the earth was formed. I believe that he created the laws of TD and all this other things to the universe itself. So that said, within those laws that the God created, planets could form in our lifetime, that we could actually observe them. You know what I'm trying to get, or am I losing it?
Yeah. I think that not to be a jerk, I think that's a much more defensible position. The position that God kind of kicked off the universe with certain features and then kind of like let it play out naturally. I think that is far more defensible. I think it's still probably not the case, and I think there's good reason to think it's not the case, but that's a conversation to be had perhaps.
Yeah, and I guess I got one more question, because I don't really stay on long Q&As like our boy Clay does, but I've been looking up. I don't know how recently they found this out, but they believe the Big Bang started because our universe borrowed matter from like other dimensions. They were like popping in and out. I forget what it's actually called, but that's one of the theories of how the Big Bang was created. But again, even if that's true, and I'm going to look it up after this Q&A, so when the panel actually opens, I can give the name of the theory. It would still
Hawking's radiation, maybe.
Nah, it's not Hawking radiation.
I don't know. No, yeah. Again, after the Q&A, I'm going to look it up. I read about it yesterday. But even if that's true, if we borrowed energy from the things that were popping in and out, like the theories suggest, it would still go against the first or second law of TD, that energy can't be created or destroyed. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the first law of thermodynamics, funnily enough, doesn't apply in our universe at a cosmic scale. And this is arguably the most disturbing thing for a lot of people, because you learn in high school that energy can't be created or destroyed, that this is a law of thermodynamics. But thermodynamics is applicable in some scenarios, and it's not applicable in other scenarios. And our universe is exactly the kind of universe that doesn't have a cosmic scale first law of thermodynamics. And there's a whole, we can talk about that in extreme detail if necessary. I don't know if it is. But suffice it to say, some universes, like we could imagine a universe that does have such a thing, our universe just doesn't. And it's because the universe is expanding that we don't have such a thing.
Okay. Yeah, I yield my time. I just want to say, that's the first time I ever heard anybody use the word suffice in a correct way. I'm actually impressed. That's a very abstract word. But I yield my time, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kraut. We love you. All right, Mr. Joe Cool. I love you so much. Glad you're here. Go for it. What you got for him?
All right. First of all, I got to admit, I watched this guy. I love this guy, right? I love when you crush flat earthers and the MAGA science, right? I love that so much. the creationists, I'm a fan of God, huge fan of that stuff. I don't even watch those, man. And the truth is because there aren't a lot of ways that I could see to prove scientifical God. Right. So if I was going to go down that line, and I hope I get the opportunity to do that shit with you tonight, but it's not scientific. I guess in some ways it is science, but God is, as we know it, it's the moral. Did I? Yes.
I'm not gonna be a hater.
I mean, so much.
I have about 6 more before I'm done.
Christy
here.
was literally saying that to me in the background at the exact same time you said that.
I'm good. But
You just
God
make
would
that
be
an official word. I
yeah,
love
I
it.
think so. I'm down. God would be morality. If I'm going to chase any science facts, it would be along that. And the best way I could, the first thing, I shouldn't say the best, first thing that pops in my head is the God could be, you can get morals from nature. You can understand that it helps not to kill your neighbor because he helped you over the winter, and you can get certain morals from that. But I think it goes further than that. And I think everybody understands that no, they don't want to be hurt if they haven't hurt anyone. These type of things and the zealotry and the effects of it, I'll probably chase those lines later.
I think that if we're talking about morality, I think that it's pretty hard to believe. Like if the sense of morality that you and I have, where like, you know, causing unnecessary suffering is bad, like it's wrong to kick a dog unless the dog is like attacking you, right?
Right.
You know, that kind of thing. Like if our sense of morality is at all like the sense of morality that's true, that comes from a creator, if it exists, then I can't make sense of that, because for basically the entire history of life on this planet, going back 4 billion years or so, life has been cruel and vicious. Suffering was the main part of life, and it seems like some sort of creator that would organize life in such a way that was the way that life had to be for 4 billion years before finally arriving at people who don't want to kill each other. I don't know, man. Is that, would you say that that's a moral agent, a moral creator?
I wouldn't chase that line of logic. I would go from the opposite side, that the mere fact that in all of those things that you just named, that morals found a way to exist. It's illogical. Everyone should be out to get blood and do the best they can to survive in this hell-ridden world. Why do people still hold out? Something is there.
It's because we're a social species, just like how ants protect their queen, how chimpanzees protect their family members, how I can't think of other examples. I mean, like, there are tons of social species, and we are one of those. Now, because we're a social species, we look out for other members of our species, other members of our group. Now, if you went back 10,000 years, our group was very small. It was maybe 100, 150 people in like a small tribe. But now we're all connected to each other. And our in-group has expanded so much that now I care about you, Joe Cool. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you live, but I care that you don't suffer because you're now in my in-group, because we're connected. We've become a global community, and our brains are trained. They're instinctually built to protect your local community. It just happens to be that our local community is really big now.
I agree. Like I say, I would want to explore the boundaries of that. I agree with everything you just said. I think the extremes, and I got some other proof things I've seen, which would be difficult to explain, and they'd be anecdotal, but they're heavy, in my opinion, if you believe them. And another reason I wouldn't jump to any conclusions too quick, because of how smart we are and how much we learned, is because we're not that freaking smart. We're still microorganisms. We're tiny in the scale of things. We haven't been around a blink of an eye. We have limited receptors. Your eyes, nose, and so only can experience certain things. We are incomplete to be making judgments on big things like this through the gates. And I'm going to want to ask you some things about time later, too. Is it even real? If it's so fucking pliable, is it even real?
Yep, that's an interesting question.
All right.
I think that there's a pretty straightforward answer, but we can get to that later.
Right.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Thank you, Joe. Okay, Mr. Felix, you've been spurging in my chat, wanted to get up here. You are welcome to ask your question to Dr. Blitz.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, for having me. And Dr. Blitz, I follow your channel and in the line. And what are you a true doctor?
Yeah, I have a PhD. So I'm not a physician.
PhD? You mind if I ask what kind of PhD you have?
Yeah, it's in physics.
Physics, okay. Okay, I'm gonna put out there two propositions. The first one, that there is no physical world, no evidence for a physical world, that everything is immaterial, and there is evidence for everything that is immaterial, and no evidence for a physical concrete world. That's the first proposition. The
Okay.
second one is an argument for God's existence that is 100% proof that God exists, is absolute and mathematically accurate and certain.
All right. So
Okay.
premise one is that there is no proof for, or no evidence, perhaps, evidence for a physical world, and there is evidence for a purely mental world. And then P2.
Immaterial
Okay, well,
world.
for a purely immaterial world. Thank you. Okay, and then the second premise was something like you have a proof, a perfect mathematical proof that a God exists. Okay, so are these two things related to each other, these two ideas?
Well, I was going to ask you, if I prove that an immaterial world exists and no material world exists, no concrete reality exists, does that prove God to you?
No. No, it doesn't.
Okay, that's why I have the argument for God. That's the second proposition. Just
Okay,
in
let's
case.
suppose I grant that there is no physical world, and let's say that the only things that exist are abstract things, immaterial things, if you will. What? Okay, how does that get us to a God?
Okay, you want me to go through the argument for God's existence then?
Well, presumably, yeah, because like I could just hold the position that like the only things that exist are abstract, and those things are certainly immaterial. And
okay,
then-
you grant you
yeah,
have no
I'll grant the
evidence.
first. I'll grant the first argument, or grant the first premise for the sake of argument. So why should I think that there's a God if only the abstract exists, or only?
So
the
you
immaterial
grant that there is no evidence for a physical material world.
For the sake of argument, I'm happy to grant it. This is not something I believe, of course, but I'm happy to answer it. I'm happy to grant it, if only because the topic is not about whether a physical world exists, but more about whether there's a creator, and that's closer to the second premise.
So you admit that there is no evidence for a physical world.
No, I'm granting it for the sake of argument. I'm granting it for the sake of argument. I'm willing to go along with it so that we can talk about the more interesting thing, where you say you have a perfect mathematical proof that a God exists.
Okay. Okay. The argument goes like this: if there is any contingent dependent being that exists, a necessary being must exist. There is evidence that a dependent contingent being exists, namely you, since you are contingent. Therefore, God follows. A necessary being follows. That's the argument.
Oh no, it's almost like I've never heard the contingency argument before.
No, it's a contingency argument, but it's not the same form. My form is unique because I make a move that the contingency in history doesn't make, and that is that only one dependent being is necessary.
Okay, so can you explain what you mean by being? Is a being just any kind of object?
A being is anything that has reality. If it has reality,
so I could just grant this argument, and the necessary being could be the universal wave function.
The universe, you mean?
The universal wave function. It's an abstract object that it captures mathematically the entirety of all of the features of reality.
No, but you're missing the point. You are contingent.
I didn't say anything about me being necessary. I said that the universal wave function could be the necessary being.
Okay, but my argument is that you are contingent.
That's cool. The universal wave function would be necessary.
No, because it cannot create.
Nothing.
It's not personal. It's not personal. It
I'm
must
sorry.
be
Where is that in
personal.
your argument?
Well, that's an addition that I have to add later
Okay,
on.
so this argument, this contingency argument, just proves that a necessary being exists. It doesn't prove that God exists.
You grant that?
Yeah, I grant that a necessary being exists. Let's grant that a necessary being exists. Now you have to characterize it.
Okay, so we're debating now what kind of necessary being must be, right?
Yep.
Okay, so it must be personal. It must
Why?
have knowledge. It
Why?
must have knowledge to create, to be able to create.
Oh, I don't think that it created. I think it's just the thing that exists.
Okay, but it's not personal.
In fact,
in
to be clear, if we grant your position that there is no physical world, then nothing indeed was created. Immaterial things are not the kind of things that are created.
Immaterial things are
Abstract.
not created?
There is no time if we're talking about immaterial things and only immaterial things. So there is no time in which an immaterial thing can be created.
Of course.
Unless by immaterial you don't mean abstract, you just mean something that's like not physical but not abstract.
That doesn't follow. Are you saying angels are always existing like God?
Angel? I don't believe angels exist.
Okay, but they are dependent beings, and they are.
I don't think angels. I don't think angels are beings at all. I don't think they're real.
Okay, but the point is that you can have a dependent being that is immaterial. There's no contradiction there.
Sure, but that doesn't mean it was created.
If it's dependent, it's created by definition.
No, that's not the case. For example, the way that we talk about mathematical quantities. So the way that we talk about the number 4, for example, is defined. 4 is defined, meaning it's dependent on the successor function and the number 3. So 4 is defined to be the successor to the number 3. Now, in that sense, 4 is dependent on the successor function and the number 3, and yet the number 4 wasn't created. It just has a dependency relation.
But I'm not saying all immaterial beings are uncreated. I'm saying some are created, and if any dependent being exists,
why should I think anything was created?
God exists.
Why should I think that anything was created?
Why should you think so?
Yeah,
Because you are
what's the argument for that?
created. Because you are created.
Created in what sense? Because as far as
You
you're
began
concerned,
to
I don't
exist.
even exist.
You began to exist. You deny
What's
your
under your worldview, I don't even exist.
you deny you are a dependent being.
Well, this is your view. Your view is that there's no evidence for a physical world. So what am I if I am not this thing?
You're a dependent immaterial being.
I'm a dependent immaterial being. Okay, so in what sense was I created if I'm immaterial?
Okay, your parents. You have parents.
Not material parents. Do you think that there were immaterial parents that had immaterial sex, and then my mother gave immaterial birth? Like, what's going on here?
Of course. What's the contradiction?
Wait, you think that you can give birth immaterially? You could. So
what's
okay,
the contradiction?
Look, Felix, you got to answer me this. What does an immaterial orgasm feel like?
What's the contradiction?
I don't even know what these words mean. What does it mean to have immaterial sex?
Immaterial sex?
Yeah. What does that mean?
I'm saying that there are material things that are visually, and material things that are visible, and material things that are invisible.
Wait, I thought under your worldview there are no material things.
Yes, they are.
Wait, there are material things?
Immaterial, visible.
Immaterial. Wait, so there's
But
visible but immaterial? How can you see something that's immaterial?
Just like you see universals, and universals are immaterial, like the redness of a ball is immaterial, and you see redness.
What does it mean for something to be visible? As far as I'm concerned, visible is something that you do with eyeballs.
Which are material.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and the eyeballs are immaterial.
How are eyeballs? Okay, maybe I just don't know what you mean by immaterial. What do you mean by immaterial?
Everything is an experience in consciousness. Everything. Every
Okay,
object.
so the eyeballs don't actually exist. They're just an experience of existing.
No, I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying they're immaterial. They are experience in consciousness.
Are they abstract? Are they
Just
abstract
like your
or
brain
concrete?
is.
Are they abstract or concrete?
They're immaterial. They're not concrete.
Well,
They're
abstract
visual.
and concrete, those are that's a true dichotomy, right? Abstract versus concrete.
They are visible, but they are immaterial. The eyeballs.
They're visible but immaterial.
Correct. What's the contradiction?
I don't know why I should think that there are visible things that are immaterial.
What's the contradiction?
Well, no, I mean you just got to give me a reason to think that this is true, right? I'm
there's
not,
no
I'm not
contradiction.
proposing that there's some contradiction, but like this seems like wholly nonsensical. So unless you can give me a reason to think it's true, I'm just not going to believe you.
Jesus' body was immaterial, and he could walk through the walls, and they could see him.
Why should I think that? I don't think that Jesus rose from the dead, right?
I'm gonna put a pin in this one because I don't
Sure.
think we're getting anywhere. Only because, like, I don't think the word immaterial is being expressed in such a way that we can utilize it for any of the arguments going forward. So maybe during the gauntlet, the rest of the team can help you, or maybe they're all just going to turn on you, Felix. I don't know at this rate. So let's go ahead and move over to Doc. Doc, are you going to play nice?
I can handle a meanie.
No. He knows better. Doc, are you going to play nice? All right, let's get Chase up here. Chase, go ahead and ask your. Oh, Chase accidentally. Chase. Okay, hold on. He's just got to reconnect back there. It popped out for a second.
Chase, that's the Chase I think it is.
That's Chase what she said.
Chase, you says you got to reconnect. I'll give you a second. Go back in and back out. Balderson, while we're waiting for Chase to fix his shit, do you want to go ahead and ask your question or get to your thought?
Yeah. I'm very curious about, so you at least lean toward abiogenesis for at least the original creation of life. That's where it somewhat at least appeared in. Do you think that how many times do you think that happened?
I have no idea. It could have been a million times.
Right.
It seems like it's not so easy to make it happen because we've been trying for like 50 years and it's so like maybe it's not so common, but I don't think I'm not convinced that it's so extraordinarily rare that it would never happen in the history of the universe.
And do you think that all those things, life forms that appeared in this way, were the exact same thing?
I don't know. It's possible that they weren't. It's possible that some organisms weren't using DNA of some kind. But it seems like the thing that inevitably won out was like bacteria using RNA. Do bacteria use RNA or DNA? No, viruses use RNA. Anyway, whatever ended up winning, it was the DNA kind, the DNA kind of life.
So if they all weren't at least the same exact organism, then why would necessarily everything have to have derived from a singular source through evolution? Why would there not be many evolutionary paths that never crossed?
So what we can say is that every single thing that we've ever checked shares at least some genetic similarities with something else, with the other stuff. There's something called last universal common ancestor, LUCA, which is basically like we don't know what it was. It was probably some very simple bacteria. But the idea is merely that, look, if we look at every single organism alive today, there are some genes that we all have. And the odds of that being the case are so extraordinarily low unless we all descend from some organism that had those genes.
Stop. Sorry. Dog's being an ass.
That's fair.
Yeah,
I can repeat. Does that help?
No, I heard you. I didn't mean that. I was trying not to. He was whining in my ear here. I was trying not to have him interrupt you. So you don't think that, again, I mean, I'm with you that chances are just statistically that if it happened, it didn't happen once, it happened numerous times. Who knows how many? We have no way of guessing that. And it very well, and there's also a good chance that continues on today in forms that we don't see. I'm very into soil biology, and there's a thing called thermophiles, and thermophiles will pop in when the conditions are right, and then it disappear when those conditions change and just disappear. You're like, and there's not even a little corpse there. You're like, why did that happen? So there's some definite weirdness. Now, you don't think that, let's say, 100 million years after the first things popped in and started an evolutionary chain, that something else couldn't have popped in and also started its own evolutionary chain?
I think it's possible, but you have to consider that like the very first thing that would have been considered life would have been extraordinarily simple and extraordinarily inefficient at consuming resources. Like it just wouldn't have been good life. It would have just been like barely alive. And so if you give the things that are alive 100 million years of evolutionary development, of, you know, increasing efficiency, increasing optimization, I think that after 100, and, you know, I'm speculating here, of course, but I would imagine that after 100 million years, after 100 million years,
put him outside, please. Sorry.
You good?
No, don't talk to Miss Balderson like that, bro.
Yeah. So I would think that after 100 million years, the life that survived 100 million years would be way better and would way outcompete anything that just formed brand new. So it could happen again, but it would just die off quickly, I would think.
You don't think that there's any chance that any of these other new life forms that appear would ever also advance and then have an evolutionary chain of their own that would not be connected to this first initial evolutionary chain? And I mean, given the time spans that you're talking about, there's more than enough time for that 100 million. That's a blip. So what? So
well,
what?
100 million is plenty of time on an evolutionary
right. That's what I'm saying. You know, that's plenty of time. And unless you're saying the world's only 100 million years old, it seems like there's plenty of time for that to have happened numerous times, according to
you. No, so I can clarify. What I'm saying is that it definitely could have happened, but the moment some new organism pops up, it's going to get eaten, right?
Everything gets eaten.
Well, no, but my point is it won't, like, what I'm suggesting is that the first organism didn't have any competition, right? So it was able to spread and develop and diversify and evolve. But if another brand new organism popped up, it would pop up completely new, really inefficient, really bad at being alive, and it would just be outcompeted by everything that was already, you know, an expert in surviving in whatever environment that it's in. And so I just think that like those things would just be driven to extinction very rapidly.
What if the only real requirement in that is that it can procreate quickly? There's lots of things that are not particularly efficient at surviving in our environment, and they have this function where they procreate. Those particular things tend to procreate more than other things.
That's a type of efficiency. Procreating rapidly is a type of efficiency.
100%.
And that's an evolved trait. So
you
if you have something,
presume, why would you presume? What traits are you presuming that this thing that just appeared would have? Why do you assume that you know exactly what traits those would have?
Well,
I kind of presume that I'm an alchemist and I'm an Odinist, and I view it more like what Kraut was talking about. Odin didn't magic the world into being. It's the place was already here. He's an alchemist. He set conditions and let things happen. That's just the way it works. But I don't understand how you're making these presumptions that you know what the characteristics were going to be in this vast thing, and there's only so many conditions on Earth, so everything's going to be to some degree related because we're all coming from the same basic materials. Like that. That's just a fact.
So perhaps I can explain my view, which I think is quite reasonable, using like a thought experiment. Imagine that, you know, that there is and of course this is non-realistic, but you know, bear with me. Imagine that there is a new life form, a new macroscopic life form that just like spontaneously emerges on the African savanna, right? It's a macroscopic thing because it's easier to imagine that way, but you know, you can imagine this being an analogy for the microscopic. It emerges on the African savanna today, right? So generally speaking, simpler things are more likely to spontaneously develop than more complex things. So whatever this thing is, it'd probably be like, likely, it would be very, very simple. It wouldn't have, you know, the mechanisms that, you know, a tiger has to grow extremely powerful teeth. It wouldn't have the elastic joints that a gazelle has to escape at 50 miles an hour. it would probably, like, you know, if we're using an analogy for a very simple organism, it would just be like a little like guy that walks slowly and eats slowly and like occasionally reproduces. And like that would just get eaten by a lion in 10 minutes. The lions are expert, they're expert survivors, expert carnivores in that niche. So whatever shows up, it'll get eaten by the things that are expert at eating things. And if it doesn't have the mechanisms in place to escape, like the gazelles evolved to have, I don't see any reason any reason to think that it would have the ability to do so.
I don't disagree that things get eaten, but by your thought train, there shouldn't be any simple organisms in the world at this point then, and there sure is. There's lots of them.
But those simple organisms are experts at their niches, right? There's a reason why.
Well, I would presume that under whatever conditions this one appeared in, there would be reasons for that appearing in them conditions. That there would.
So what could be the case is it could be the case that there was, like, for some reason, an empty niche, maybe, that just didn't have like predators around, that didn't have life in it already. It was just completely devoid of life, and it was just able to hang out there for 100 million years so that it had time to evolve and become efficient and optimized for its environment, and then it could outcompete anything that did show up to try to eat it. That's a possibility, but as far as I can tell, there's not really a place on Earth that doesn't have life.
Not too much. I have those bugs that live inside volcanoes. That shit's weird.
Yeah, and they're related to us.
Oh. There's only so many elements on the Earth, so we
no, but they're genetically related to us.
Well, so is a banana and a potato,
right.
And you know,
so we all descend from common ancestors, from one common ancestor, in fact. Otherwise, we wouldn't. Otherwise, we wouldn't all share genes.
Once again, you know that the thought process behind that, the statistically just makes zero sense. That there was one ancestor that popped into being, and we all somehow descend from that exact one being, that nothing else appeared and had its own evolutionary chain that across the entire Earth, like that statistically that just makes zero sense.
I mean, don't ask me, ask evolutionary biologists. This is their claim. Their claim is that, look, like, we can tell from the genetics of everything that's alive that everything has shared a common ancestor. We all share genes. What are the odds of? I mean, what's more likely, that there was one organism that outcompeted everything and we descend from that organism, or that you have two organisms that are completely unrelated yet somehow have identical genes?
Well, the weird part is that there's a uncountable number of organisms, so there wasn't this need for one organism to be the only thing to evolve, and that's the interesting part in this story. You're making it out like one thing, even if that one thing, even if that one thing became more adapted to its environment, became better, and then it left behind this other thing and became then a new thing and a new thing. You're making it out like there's one chain, and this one thing was the dominant thing that's eventually turned into humans. Well, there's uncountable species of things on the place we live here.
Can you account for why all of those things always share certain genes?
Yes, because we all live in the same, and we are all eating out of the same stuff. We're all touching. There's a thing called horizontal DNA transfer. We're all living here. We're all bumping each other. We're all breathing the same air. We're all eating each other's poop and dead bodies, and everything's just a recycle. Yeah, everything you eat, Sarah, is all out of dead things and poop. Yeah. And the poop is really just that thing being dead, and the animal actually processed it a little faster than it would have out in the field, and then it actually works out much better. But I mean, it is we're all living off of recyclings of the same stuff.
So horizontal gene transfer is a thing, but that all that gets you is that these two things are like the same kind of organism now. Right? If you have two organisms that exchange genes, so that now they both have the same genes as each other, they're the same gene, they're the same organism.
They aren't the same organism. They're the same species. You get horizontal DNA transfer from a corn stalk that you walk by that your particular line has never encountered in any way, shape, or form. You don't suddenly become corn. Yeah, you get horizontal DNA transfer from everything you eat and touch and everything.
I don't think
And
that's the case,
that
but
your
I'm not a
body
biologist.
makes,
Maybe
your
I'm wrong
body
about
makes
that.
micro adjustments according to that, which is the function of it. Because then now I've lived in this environment, and now my progeny later on are going to be more suited to this environment than I was, if it's assuming it's a new environment. That's the way
I think
that
it's, and we can just fact check this, but I don't think that we do. Like, horizontal gene transfer is a feature of microorganisms.
it's a
as far as I'm
feature
aware.
of humans too also.
Okay, I mean, I'm not sure I buy that claim, but
breathe.
we don't have to fact check live, so that's fine. So is the claim then that you could have two microorganisms that evolved completely separately, they are completely separate branches of life, and yet they are compatible enough that they can exchange genes?
If I dump out a box, 100%. We're all living in this same place that's only has a limited number of elements, a limited number of all these kind of things. We can't vary that damn much. You can't be something that survives that doesn't exist here, or even thrives in it. If it kills it, we both had to kind of have those functions built into us because we're living in the same environment.
So
and
how would you
we're
test this
bumping each
hypothesis?
other.
How would you test this hypothesis to check to see if two different organisms came from different lineages, evolutionary lineages?
Right, you just make you do like they do, where you just make this weird assertion, like you're just making it's just a mind exercise. You understand that statistically, what you're saying is near impossible. Like it's shockingly impossible.
It doesn't sound like you're giving me a way to test your hypothesis. You're just saying, but the other guy's wrong.
How would you test it? There's no way to know.
Well, that's
even
what I'm asking.
There's no way to even know how many species have popped into existence.
So the position is unfalsifiable?
What's that?
So the position is unfalsifiable?
It might be, maybe only one thing ever popped into existence that was alive and everything descended from it. Maybe that is the way that panned out. We don't know that either.
That's a falsifiable claim.
How would we ever determine what happened in the beginning of the Earth?
So the last universal common ancestor idea makes certain.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay,
I mean,
so the idea of Luca is, it's at least a falsifiable position, but it seems like the position you're offering isn't falsifiable. So I just don't see why I should give credence to it.
Again, you can't prove. It's no different than the is God real. Neither side can actually prove what the hell they're talking about. I understand what you're saying, but you understand what I'm saying also. And so the claim that statistically that you're making is much less probable than the one that I'm making, because the chances of abiogenesis happening once and everything descending from that once.
It's not my claim. I'm making the claim that it could have happened multiple times, but that one thing ended up winning.
Why would these other things also not evolve? You're making zero sense. And if so, why is there not one singular species of thing on this place?
Okay, so look, if you have a petri dish and you take 4 slightly different bacteria, and one of those bacteria, just by sheer random chance, is slightly better at digesting food, then if you wait long enough, that entire petri dish will be covered by just that one bacteria, and all of the others will have died out. That's all I'm saying.
You need to run your experiments longer. So there's a neat experiment called the Archaeus of water, and all you do is you catch rainwater and you put it in the dark, and you give it an anaerobic fermentation, and you watch it under a microscope, and you watch that some things will start appearing, and those things will live, and they're eating off of something you can't see because your microscope's not that badass. And fucking then the next things appear, and they eat those last things that appear, and there's still some of those, and then other things appear and start eating those other things. And it turns out that these first things, they keep coming around because they're doing a little job, and it just all goes through cycles. They did everything just like I just explained with the thermophiles. Some of those things, those don't even have a predator. They show up, do their job while the conditions are right, and roll the fuck out. How does this happen? I don't know.
How does this address what I said?
That your thing, the way you're stating it, this other thing is now gone, and we have one other thing, and this thing came out on top, killed all the other things. There's more than one species of thing in this place, dude. I don't know if you've met it. Like here, I got a cat here. Like this is a cat.
The analogy that I was giving you, the example that I was giving you, is a simplified version of what I'm saying. It's just that, look, sometimes one thing is more successful than the other things, and it outcompetes its competitors.
I don't disagree. So why would there only in this entire world only be one thing that was capable of surviving and then having an evolutionary chain where it's
not
changed?
to claim that only one thing was capable of surviving. It's that there was a thing that was most capable of surviving.
Let me put a pin in this one.
Sure.
And there is a sense of urgency to the chat because you didn't come anywhere near the goal, and the goal was actually set at half pace of what it normally is. So I'm completely disappointed. As the mother over here at Mater Nation, I'm incredibly disappointed. I'm not upset.
Did I do something wrong?
No, not you. You were great.
The chat has failed.
Yeah, it was your fault.
The chat has failed to meet its goal. I set a timer, and you have now exactly 8 minutes if you'd like to get to gauntlet mode to get that sorted through. And again, it's half of the usual price because I was feeling nice tonight, and yet you have shit all over what we represent to get to gauntlet mode. How fucking dare you? We might have to go into grift mode. But I want to hand it over to Chase to have his thoughts. Welcome to the panel, Chase. And if the chat fails at what it needs to do, Chase will be the last person on here. And everyone that's backstage won't have their opportunity because
let it not be so.
The chat has failed the backstage people and gauntlet mode. So some of y'all better figure it out. Go ahead, Chase, with your thoughts, please.
Hi, I am probably going to be a welcome break from what Dr. Blitz has been dealing with. I also work in physics. I'm a PhD student working in quantum gravity. And
hi, Chase. I'm like, I thought I knew that name.
Yeah. So the main reason I came on, and I can even leave after this, is I've heard several mentions of higher dimensions, and that's usually like my bat signal, because that is. A lot of these theories, if not all of them that they're referencing, are coming from string theory, M theory. And just something to clear up, the extra dimensions are not like alternate realities. They're not like stacked on top of our world. They're just independent directions in space-time. There's really nothing mystical about them. They're not outside of space-time in any way. So that was one thing that I just kind of wanted to put in for, because it's kind of recurred a few times, this extra dimensions idea.
He's actually a string theorist, by the way. Like, that's his day job.
Before you leave, can I ask him something, Sarah, before he leaves?
They still have they still have 6 minutes. It probably would be wiser, Joe, to do a grift break so that you guys can please.
Well, wait, chat. You know, I get way too much. No chance I can remember what I was trying to ask him. The string theories, I remember one, perhaps a couple that had gravity sharing 9 dimensions, which is would account for its weakness. Wouldn't that mean they're stacked onto each other in the, in the dimensional sense that these guys are talking about?
So you're kind of getting two things confused, but yeah, so string theory exists in 9+1 dimensions. What that means is 9 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time. M theory is 10+1. There's an idea called supergravity, which only works at a maximum of 11 dimensions, again, 10+1. But what we do in these extra dimensions is they're compactified, so they're extremely small.
But still in the current universe as we know it. They're just smaller.
Yeah. So the best way I know to explain it is, let's just start with adding just 1 dimension, like 4+1. If you have X, Y, and Z, anywhere you move perfectly along X does not affect Y and Z. Let's just add W. And you can move as much as you want in X, Y, and Z, but it will never affect your value in W. It's a completely independent direction. It's still in space-time of the universe as we know it. It's just a different direction.
All right. So it wouldn't be stacked in that sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Aren't you relying on a physical universe for your multi-dimensional realm travel?
I don't have a multi-dimensional realm in any sense that's more than we live in a 3+1 universe.
Because I was the one who brought it up, and I specifically mentioned that when you're talking about a physical universe, you're going to have to rely on physics, and the one place that does not rely on that would be the existence of the realm that a god, if the god exists, that would be the place that he would exist, in a place where physics and all of that extra stuff that exists here, it's just not going to be a factor. It's not going to be a necessity.
Yeah, and obviously that's not really a claim that I can falsify. I was just mentioning as far as a higher dimension in terms of a physical theory is just another direction. When they say higher, they just mean the numbers going up.
So what do you think when you hear that endless universes, they split and there's a U for everything? You just be like thinking these people are crazy when you
That's
hear
a
that?
different kind of like extra universes. This is they still exist in 3+1 space or 3+1 space-time dimensions, or 9+1 if you think string theory is true, which you shouldn't. I kid, but but the point is that that's like a separate idea. Those are still occupying the same place.
Okay, just more axes.
No. In this case, they're not. It's not like the same place, but with more axes. They're literally the same place. You could have those things existing in 3+1 dimensions, like regular space, regular 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension at a time, and you can still have this branching kind of many worlds idea. Those are all in the same place.
It's hard to visualize what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's several notions of a multiverse. You can, if you're ever curious, look up like type 1, type 2, type 3 multiverse. I believe they're up to 5 different types of multiverse ideas at this point.
Hey,
you guys get any credence to them?
Some more than
Look up the first 5 dimensions. That'll help you out a lot. The only reason I know about them is because of theory of relativity really interests me, and parts of that dive into different dimensions. So look up the first 5 dimensions, and that'll help you out and go from there.
Yeah, I think he's referencing what we call Kaluza-Klein theory.
Yeah, it's been a while, so I don't want to address it. It's been a while. And again, I only know dimensions because the theory of relativity dives into that. So I'm not too versed on it, but I know a little bit about it. But the first 5 you really want to study, and then
I'm making a note of it. Yeah.
I would suggest looking at the 4-dimensional spacetimes, but yeah, that's fine.
Let me thought bubble this for a second. Ant, would you like to tell the chat what they need to do, sir? They have 2 minutes.
Well, hopefully within 2 minutes, some kind savior comes forward and rescues the chat from a big fat L. It's been a long time, chat, but that's what you're facing. Big fat L.
It has been a long time since they've taken an L, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
They always take a W. Always take a W. Clay, do your pleading, sir. You're always good at this.
You guys know that you really are a failure. I can't stop you from being a failure. Like, I mean, it's a really simple thing. $10 at a time, and all of a sudden you've got a gauntlet. But you know what? You didn't do. You didn't throw those $10 in. So now you got to do 100 once, and this is just once. Be a winner. I mean, what are we doing here? Like, we have more to discuss. This is a great fucking topic. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
It is. I dug deep and wide to find Dr. Blitz, and I got him here for you, and you're failing me.
How could you?
Santa, I know this makes you so mad because this is the intersection of your heart.
Yeah. I mean, guys, I'll pitch in $10 myself just to watch Clay talk to him again. But really, let's do what's right, and let's contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Santa. Kraut, what do you say?
Yeah, it's a pretty engaging. It's an interesting topic, but with everybody on here, we probably all know something the chat never heard of. So if we bring it up, it can make you look it up online and you learn something new. And again, it's entertaining. So put a little bit of money up. Yesterday, Sarah, the chat was killing it. I don't know what's going on today, man. Repetition, man. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. There's 100 people, actually over 100 people watching. Everyone could literally give $1 right now and make me a happy tomato once again. Joe, tell them what to do.
Well, I don't want to pull a 10th man and threaten to act out. But if this rare thing of missing the mark occurs on Dr. Blitz night, I will be bringing that shit up endlessly whenever I'm over here. Don't let it be tonight that you guys fucking change course.
He said it. Felix, your first time here, but you got to tell the chat what to do if you want the show to keep going.
Okay, so are you convinced that God exists, Dr. Blitz?
No, okay.
Sorry,
that's not what we're doing.
But I might be in an hour. But
He
we just
might
don't have
be.
that chance. We
Well,
just
why
might not have
not?
that chance.
Why not? If I refuted that it cannot be impersonal.
All right.
Y'all gotta keep this going. Y'all got to keep this going, right? You must keep this going.
Chase, I feel like you understand what's going on. You want to tell the chat what they need to do?
Sure. I'll start with a quote that's often attributed to Albert Einstein when he was asked, what was about him that made him such a genius, and he said, "There's no genius here. I am passionately curious." So if you're curious about all the ways this conversation could go and all the ways that it could benefit you, the things you could learn, I'd want it to continue.
Amen. Somebody understood the assignment. And Mr. Balderson, I can never click the button.
I'm sorry, Sarah.
That's okay. You failed. Mr. Balderson, tell them what to do.
I know.
Are you not entertained? You put the pen, you put the donos on the screen, and then what? You guys need blood? Carpenter Tom saved you guys' asses right now.
Oh, speaking of Tom Carpenter, you summoned him. You summoned
Let's
him.
go.
Chat still has to take their L. Uncle Guns, you know what to do. Until I remove the dono from the screen, the chat is currently on tomatoes only in the chat, unless they donoed. So we'll say Clem is safe, Tom is safe, Robin is safe, Spin is safe, because he donoed over on Ben's side, I'll count it, and Inquisitive is safe. Otherwise, everyone else, you have to send nothing but fucking tomatoes in the chat until this dono leaves the screen. All right. I'm going to start getting the gauntlet set up. You have bought compliments of Tom Carpenter, your gauntlet mode. I was about to really get pissed. Like we were really getting in like the deep universe shit. And y'all almost just fucking that.
Listen, call Sarah.
Willing participant to deep dive the conversation. He's here on good faith. Everyone's having a good faith conversation. Nobody's getting upset. Everybody's having a good time. You guys almost just lost that. What the actual fuck? All right, I'm gonna set up gauntlet mode. I will kick it back to, I forget who was talking last. But
Chase.
I think Chase, we were still in string theory, right?
Yeah, I did cover mostly what I wanted to with the higher dimensions, but then I kind of started fielding a little bit of string theory questions before we had our no debacle.
Of course, we could do a twofer. I like Blitz, but I had some questions along that line, like quantum field theory, and if that's not the potential or origination of particles coming in and out of realized material.
And I wanted to back Balderson up on some of his claims there. It just wasn't my time to speak. But if things are popping in and out of existence, even though the current shit eats them up, shouldn't it be evidence of? And if it's so fucking rare that it only occurred, then that might be pointing to the God again. When something beats the odds like that.
Popping out in and out of existence with these virtual particles is extremely common. It's happening kind of everywhere all the
That's
time.
a lie. Virtual particles aren't real. Down with big virtual particles.
I wanted to ask them both. Yes.
Can we just really talk?
Yeah. Oh, yes. You guys are officially free. Backstage, I do have Spin City and Effigy waiting patiently back there as well. If you would like any of them up on the screen, you have to send 10 bones to boot someone else. You can boot whoever you want, except for Dr. Blitz. He is on immunity, of course.
Well, Dr. Blitz and Chase just made my night. And if you need a spot.
Me as well. Me as well.
So Dr. Blitz.
Dr. Blitz, just quickly, the quick, stupid AI search, considering hundreds of human genes were found to be more conserved with non-mammals than with most mammals. Few of these genes overlap with known horizontal transfer genes. This indicated that horizontal gene transfer is more common than we expected in the human genome.
Okay. Not a
I
biologist.
love that you took the time to
I'm happy
figure
to be
that
wrong
shit
about
out. Look it up.
horizontal gene
Yeah.
transfer happening in humans. Yeah, sure.
So you understand why it cannot be impersonal? The necessary.
No, I
being?
don't. I don't think you made your case for that.
Yeah.
Okay, because
I didn't get it.
How else is going to be able to create or cause
Again,
anything?
you still haven't demonstrated that anything is created.
What do you mean? You are not created?
We could just all exist as a timeless wave function, each of us dependent on the whole.
Are you saying you are a necessary being?
No, I'm dependent on the whole.
Are you saying an impersonal cause you to exist?
No, I'm not saying that. Oh wait, did
So
you say
what is-
impersonal or personal?
Impersonal, not personal.
Well, I wouldn't say that I was caused to exist on this immaterial worldview. If you're making the claim that everything is immaterial, then I don't think that anything was caused at all, because cause, as far as I'm concerned, is a material phenomenon.
And speaking of cause, allow me to
There's no
interrupt for
evidence for
just
that.
a moment. Allow me to interrupt for just one moment. I'm going to go ahead and shut down over on the Raging Tomato side on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, X, Insta, whatever. And you need to head over to the Gauntlet over on YouTube. That is at the Gauntlet Debate. Head over there. Otherwise, you can catch the raid. I'm shutting down the Raging